I was always overshadowed by my stepmother and stepfather's favoritism toward my stepsister, despite my hard work and achievements. Since I was 15, I have had to deal with my step-parents' blatant partiality toward my stepsister. My mom remarried Robert, 45 million, who owns his own accounting firm, and that's when it all began. Linda, 42F, his wife, is a real estate agent and is always immaculately dressed in fashionable outfits with flawlessly manicured nails. Ashley, 19F, their daughter, is the same age as myself. Almost immediately after we moved in together, the first indications of preferential treatment surfaced. Although there was plenty of room in our suburban Connecticut home for everyone, it soon became obvious that Ashley was the queen. My step-parents made sure Ashley stood out in every manner, even though other parents treat their kids the same way. Everything that came after was shaped by the day of the move. I was assigned the smaller room that faced the brick wall of the neighbor's house, and Ashley was given the larger bedroom with the bay window and window seat. Shopping excursions turned into a distressing reminder of my role within the family. Ashley would shop at high-end stores for designer clothing and new Nike sneakers, while I was told to check out Target's sale shelves. Robert gave me a $50 Old Navy gift card the first time this happened, and I recall standing in the mall watching Linda and Ashley vanish into Nordstrom. He said, "Get whatever you need," and turned to follow them. I will never forget the casual dismissal and the unambiguous message about my position in the family hierarchy. The way they treated us at family time was more painful than the tangible differences. Whenever Ashley talked about her day at supper, Linda and Robert would genuinely listen and lean in to offer follow-up questions. They would hardly look up from their plates when it was my turn to contribute, making merely infrequent mhms or bringing up other topics. I once attempted to spread the word about my victory in the school science fair. Linda cut me off before I could finish, reminding Ashley that her costume fitting for the dance recital was coming soon. It was especially annoying when it came to extracurricular activities. Ashley participated in every activity in which she even remotely expressed interest, including private tennis instruction, dance classes, piano lessons, art workshops, and drama club. I asked to join the school's debate team, which only cost $100 to register, but Linda replied, "We need to be mindful of the budget." The following day, they enrolled Ashley in private swimming lessons that cost $200 per hour because she said she liked the water. Our communal restroom turned into yet another battlefield. Ashley's side was filled with pricey Sephora skincare and makeup, while I utilized cheap brands that I purchased with my stipend, which was a fourth of Ashley's. The towels were also different. I used the simple ones from the hall closet, but she had soft monogrammed pairs. She was so upset when I inadvertently used one of her face washes by accident that Linda had to create a lockable cabinet for Ashley's particular items. As high school went on, the gap between our intellectual abilities grew more noticeable. Ashley found it difficult to maintain a B average, whereas I kept straight A's. However, their reaction to our accomplishments was oddly biased. Ashley's favorite Italian restaurant hosted a celebration dinner after she received a B+ on a history test. After I was elected into the National Honor Society, Linda asked Ashley about her cheerleading practice without even looking at the letter. I could never do it justice, but family photos do. Ashley is the focal point of every photo, typically sporting a fresh, stylish outfit. I appear like an afterthought in my own family photographs, always in the background, wearing whatever was on sale. Since Linda had just provided him with Ashley's dimensions and preferences for the shoot, the photographer really questioned whether I was a family friend assisting with our junior year photo session. Holiday festivities turned into just another reminder of my position within the family. Ashley would always have more gifts than I had at Christmas, including high-end gadgets, designer clothing, and whatever else was in style at the time. Typically, I gave useful presents like socks, generic school supplies, or small-value gift cards. Ashley received an iPhone and a MacBook Pro for Christmas last year. I received some clothing from a bargain retailer and a $50 Target gift card. Linda was already documenting Ashley's reaction to her new laptop when I attempted to thank them nevertheless. Their treatment of our social lives was also in contrast. For their get-togethers, Linda would order pizzas and provide fancy refreshments, and Ashley was encouraged to have friends over at any time. I once requested permission to bring 2 friends over so we could study for our finals. "Just keep it down," Linda added, "and make sure they bring their own snacks." "We're saving the good stuff for Ashley's cheerleading squad party tomorrow," she continued without taking her eyes off her phone. There is so much more to tell about how things developed from here, particularly with what transpired with my mom during all of this and how I ultimately received support from an unexpected source. I have been keeping notes on my phone about everything that has happened. If you would want to hear the rest of the story, please let me know. It becomes more challenging, particularly when some family secrets are revealed and college preparations start. In our junior year, things really began to change. I applied for a job at a neighborhood coffee shop after deciding I needed some independence. Ashley reacted right away when I told them over supper. As she gave Ashley another $100 cash for her weekend shopping, Linda nodded in agreement and said, "Oh my God, you're actually going to be a waitress? That's so common." The coffee shop turned into a haven for me. I had coworkers that genuinely recognized me and appreciated my contributions for the first time. After noticing my attention to detail, my manager, Sarah, swiftly promoted me from simple cleaning tasks to drink preparation. I became an expert at managing the morning rush in 3 months. Regular clients would especially wait in my line since they knew I would accurately recall their intricate requests. "You're a natural at this," Sarah would say as she demonstrated new latte art techniques for me. At home, however, Linda and Robert persisted in their apathy, save for when they could make fun of my work. "Careful with that plate, Ashley," Robert would say every night when they were eating. "Don't want you ending up as a waitress." They chuckled as I cleared the table in silence, presumably oblivious to the irony of my doing just what they were making fun of. Academically, I also had a sea change in my junior year. My lab reports were frequently cited as examples for the class by Mrs. Rodriguez in AP Chemistry. "Notice how Audrey structured her methodology," she would add while pointing to the projector showing my work. I felt Ashley's eyes searing into my back, but I continued to concentrate on the task at hand. This is university-level precision. It felt good to get my efforts acknowledged after years of being unnoticed. Parent-teacher conferences were one very eye-opening experience. My performance was being evaluated by Mrs. Rodriguez. "Your daughter has a remarkable grasp of complex concepts. She's top of the class, and her lab work shows exceptional promise for a future in scientific research." Before I had a chance to respond, Linda asked, "Are you sure you're not favoring her? It seems like teachers always praise Audrey while ignoring Ashley's unique talents." With every academic achievement, the strain at home increased. My stepfamily seemed to respond equally and oppositely to every A+ I brought home. They would swiftly brush over my accomplishments and turn their attention to praising Ashley's most recent participation award or the C+ she worked really hard for. The night that altered everything then arrived. After finishing my calculus assignment, I was on my way to the kitchen for some water when I heard Linda and Robert conversing in their study. Normally, I would have disregarded their late-night chatter, but Robert's remarks made me take notice. He said, "Sometimes I wonder if we made a mistake," in a somber voice. Linda said, "What do you mean?" "Having both of them. Ashley would have been enough. She's everything we could want in a daughter. But Audrey, she's just there. We would have been fine with just Ashley." The glass nearly fell out of my grasp. My heart wasn't as fortunate, but I managed to catch it in time. In that instant, everything became crystal clear. All of the years spent hoping for a change and striving to win their love suddenly felt so pointless. I wasn't wanted by them. They didn't. I was the extra load they wished they didn't have to bear, the undesired addition. Something changed within me after that night. I gave up trying to win their approval and gave my studies my whole attention. My thinking unclogged in unexpected ways when I wasn't under the continual pressure to win their approval. My already excellent marks took on a remarkable quality. I started getting perfect scores, but they didn't notice or care. "Excellent analysis, Audrey," Mr. Peterson said one day in AP English as he held up my work about the Great Gatsby. Ashley tensed next to me, her pencil tapping angrily on her desk. "Class, this is exactly the kind of deep thinking I'm looking for. Your comparison of Gatsby's invented identity to modern social media personas is particularly insightful." From the corner of my eye, I could see her face getting red, but I continued to look straight. In other classes, similar scenes occurred. I was invited to a prominent essay competition in AP history because of my understanding of the Cold War. My experiment design in physics was chosen for the state science fair. Regardless of the subject, Ashley became more enraged the more the teachers complimented my efforts. When Mrs. Rodriguez invited me to coach other students in chemistry, that was the tipping point. She chuckled and remarked, "Your explanations are often clearer than mine. Would you consider leading some study sessions before the AP exam?" Ashley's voice came to me from downstairs that night. "Mom, the teachers are being mean to me. They always praise Audrey and make me look bad. They're doing it on purpose." With her high-end handbag swinging and her heels clicking on the linoleum flooring, Linda strode into school the following day. She marched into Principal Williams' office, where they summoned in Mrs. Rodriguez, and I observed from the corridor. "I want to know why your teachers are discriminating against my daughter," Linda pleaded. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out our progress logs and placed them side by side while remaining composed and professional. "Here are both girls' records. Audrey consistently scores in the top percentile in all subjects, while Ashley? Are you saying my Ashley isn't intelligent? Linda cut in, raising her voice. Not at all. I'm merely pointing out Audrey's academic achievements. However, she was not persuaded by any amount of proof. I heard Linda explaining to Robert that day when she got home that the teachers were clearly biased against their precious Ashley. I had grown weary of begging for pocket money and seeing Ashley receive hundreds of dollars for simply being alive. My job at the coffee shop was now my passport to independence, not just a haven. I opened a second bank account that neither Linda nor Robert knew about, and I began saving every dime I could. The tips from the regular customers went directly into that account, and they frequently increased them after they found out I was saving for college. However, even this minor triumph was not without opposition. Ashley and her friends would frequently leave their empty cups on the table, purposefully spilling liquids to make my job more difficult, and then loudly comment on how sad it was to see people stuck serving coffee. The message was clear. I wasn't even permitted to excel in a job that they viewed as beneath them. My coworkers noticed and began taking their directions instead. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You're embarrassing with your tiny house and budget clothes. I've moved up in the world, Linda yelled in a heated phone conversation I had overheard years earlier. She had been speaking to her parents, my grandparents, whom I had never met because they weren't good enough for her new way of life. I sneaked into Linda's home office that evening while she and Ashley were out shopping again, this time for Ashley's pre-graduation wardrobe makeover. I located the location in the older part of town under DF4, Do Not Contact, in her address book. I felt a mixture of fear and hope when I looked at that address. These were my grandparents. They might genuinely be interested in getting to know me and consider me more than just an unwelcome member of someone else's ideal family. After my shift at the cafe tomorrow, I've made the decision to go see them. I don't know what to anticipate, but I know I have to try. The address is just a few blocks from my workplace, in a neighborhood Linda would likely deem below her. I've been missing the family link for years, but maybe, just maybe, I'll find it now. After I meet them, I'll provide an update. I feel like this could be the start of something significant. I have a feeling that meeting my grandparents could completely alter my destiny, not just my current circumstances. First update. 2 weeks have passed since my last post, and I'm amazed at how much has changed. I was standing in front of a tiny blue house with a well-kept garden after my shift at the cafe that day. Every step I took up the path to my grandparents' house felt heavier than the one before, and my heart was racing. The well-kept grass was covered in lengthy shadows from the late afternoon sun. The door opened when I held up my hand to knock, revealing my grandparents, an elderly couple. The man sported wire-rimmed glasses and a kind smile, and the woman, dressed in a flour-dusted flowered apron, had her gray hair pulled back in a tidy bun. When I said, "Hello, I'm Audrey Matthews, I think you're my grandparents," they gave me a perplexed look. Their mouths fell open at the same time. My grandma said, "Oh my God, Frank," as she put her palm to her mouth, "it's really her. You look just like your mother did at your age." After they invited me in, I found myself seated in their comfortable living room, sipping tea from fine cups as they stared at me intently. Photographs from decades of family history that I was unaware of dotted the walls. Among them, I saw photos of my mother in her teenage years, sporting the same bashful grin I had seen so many times in my own image. Numerous visits followed that initial one. I would spend hours with my grandparents, bringing them cookies and pastries from work, while pretending to be working extra shifts at the cafe. They truly cared about every aspect of my life and were excellent listeners. They questioned me in depth about what I was studying after I told them about my AP classes. They offered to help evaluate my essays when I brought up my college applications. Things at school kept getting more intense. Princeton sent me a large envelope one morning. I could hardly open it since my hands were shaking so much. Full academic scholarship. Before leaving for home, I hurried to show my grandparents, and their response was just what I had ever hoped for in a family. As Grandpa continued to remark, "I knew you had it in you, kiddo," Grandma began to cry. When I eventually told Robert and Linda about Princeton, they responded just as I had anticipated. Distractedly, Linda remarked, "That's nice, dear," before turning to face Ashley. "Honey, have you decided which state school you're applying to?" My acceptance was entirely forgotten as Ashley sniffed and announced that she was taking a gap year to find herself through travel and self-discovery. Within minutes, they were talking about possible places for Ashley's gap year. After averting a potential catastrophe during a health inspection, I was promoted to shift supervisor at work. A little celebration was thrown for me by my coworkers, who signed a card and produced a homemade cake. It meant more to me than any praise I had ever received at home when my boss, Sarah, called me aside and said, You're going places, kid. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Everything changed once again yesterday. As usual, I went to my grandparents' house after closing the cafe. They looked at each other during our chat as if they were nervous. Audrey, Grandpa started after clearing his throat. We need to tell you something. I was astounded by what they disclosed next. As it happens, they are not the humiliatingly impoverished relatives Linda had always talked about. They had put their meager resources in a number of software startups after Mom severed their relationship. They decided to continue living simply in their comfortable home even if those investments had paid off handsomely. Grandpa stated, "Your mother left us because she felt we were too poor, too beneath her," using a headshake. The irony is, we're probably wealthier than she is now. We just don't feel the need to show it off. Grandma said, "We've been waiting for the right moment to help you. And with graduation coming up, this seems perfect." Everything they told me is still being processed by me. I have more to say, but I must exercise caution in what I do next. 2 weeks remain until graduation, and Linda has been hinting about a large family celebration. For Ashley, of course. To celebrate Ashley's academic accomplishments, she has already reserved a classy restaurant and invited all of their friends. After I graduate, I'll provide another update. My grandparents claimed they had something planned, and judging by their smiles, I can tell it will be something important. I have a feeling that this day will be remembered by everyone in the family. Second update. The graduation ceremony proceeded according to plan. My step-parents hardly gave a cheer when they mentioned my name as valedictorian. However, they cheered and yelled like if Ashley had just won an Olympic medal when she crossed the stage. Then the shocking news arrived. Linda virtually bounced in her seat when she said, "Girls, we have exciting news. We're celebrating graduation in Hawaii." Over breakfast the following morning. Despite everything, my heart briefly felt better, but I should have known better. You understand, right? Someone has to watch the house, and you have your job at the cafe. "Honey," Linda said to me, her voice brimming with phony pity. "We only got 3 tickets for us and Ashley." Ashley stirred her orange juice without even trying to disguise her smirk. "Don't worry, sis," she murmured, sounding overly kind. "I'll send you lots of pictures of me living my best life on the beach." I observed them loading their pricey bags into the taxi the following morning from our front door. Ashley turned around and gave a theatrical, enthusiastic wave. "I'll make sure to send you beautiful photos from Hawaii." With trembling hands, I took out my phone and dialed my grandparents as soon as the cab vanished around the corner. When I heard Grandma's voice, the tears I had been suppressing finally came out. They went to Hawaii without me. They just left me here like I'm nothing," I cried. Grandma said, "Oh, sweetheart," in a gentle yet forceful voice. "Come over right now. We'll have our own graduation celebration." Still blotting away my tears, I pulled onto their street and drove to their house. At that moment, I spotted something out of the ordinary. A brand new Mercedes C-Class automobile shining in the summer sun parked in their driveway. Next to their small house, it appeared totally out of place. I strolled up to their front door and inquired, "Whose car is that?" Grandpa held up a set of keys, and his eyes glowed. "Yours. Happy graduation, Audrey." I was certain I had misheard him, so I stood there with my mouth open. They clarified that they had been waiting for the ideal opportunity to prepare this surprise for weeks. We celebrated with a lovely handmade graduation meal while we spent the afternoon together. A banner that read, "Congratulations, graduate," was displayed throughout the dining room, and the table was arranged with their finest china. 2 weeks passed slowly. My phone would ring every night with a new alert: Ashley posing on various beaches, dining at fancy restaurants, or relaxing by infinity pools. The captions for each picture got more and more offensive: "Living my best life as someone serves coffee." The day of their return then arrived. I was in the living room, looking out the window while feigning to read a book. I couldn't help but smile as I watched their expressions play out in slow motion as the cab arrived. Mom was the first to notice. Ashley dropped her expensive beach bag on the concrete driveway after she stopped so suddenly that she was directly struck by her. Dad almost stumbled over them both when he was fumbling with their pricey matching luggage set. Linda's harsh, high-pitched voice echoed through the front glass. "What is that?" Her immaculately manicured finger was quivering a little as she pointed at the Mercedes as though it would bite her. I enjoyed every moment of their bewilderment as I walked slowly to the front door. They all turned to stare at me as if I were a ghost when I stepped onto the porch. With his face flushed from shock and the Hawaiian sun, Dad shouted, "Whose car is that?" As Ashley often did while flaunting her fancy purse straps, I twisted the keys around my finger. "Mine," I replied. Ashley barkingly laughed, but I could detect the doubt in her voice. "Yeah, right. Like you could afford that on your waitress salary. With every word I could manage, I said, actually, it was a graduation gift from Grandma and Grandpa. Linda's cheeks lost color so quickly that I feared she may pass out. What? You know, I replied with a smirk, your parents. The ones you were too embarrassed to talk to because they were too poor. Those grandparents? I feared Dad could have whiplash because he turned to Linda so quickly. Linda, call your parents, right now. When Mom took out her phone, her hand trembled. When my grandmother responded, she didn't even make an effort to be polite. She insisted, where did you get the money for that car? Grandma's quiet, mildly amused voice could be heard over the phone. Oh, hello to you too, dear. Enjoying your expensive vacation? There was mayhem for the following few minutes. Everything would never be the same after family secrets were revealed. Third update. I had never been happier as I was during the final weeks of summer at my grandparents' place. Grandpa's humming as he read the newspaper and the aroma of Grandma's coffee would greet me each morning. No feeling like an unwanted shadow, no fighting for attention, no walking on eggshells, just tranquility. It was bittersweet to move to Princeton. I bid my grandparents farewell with a hug and vowed to phone them every day before leaving in my Mercedes with everything I possessed. I felt as though I was crossing a line between my old and new lives on the drive to New Jersey. Just 10 minutes from university, my grandparents had gotten me a lovely small apartment. It was nothing special, but it was far nicer than any dorm room. There were large windows, hardwood floors, and even a tiny balcony where I could study. Despite my objections, they persisted on paying the rent. However, I still desired some autonomy, so I took a part-time work at a nearby coffee shop. I didn't miss the irony, still serving coffee, but this time out of choice rather than obligation. I found myself making true friends for the first time in my life, and the majority of my coworkers were fellow students. In the best way conceivable, the first week of classes was overwhelming. I was simply another freshman figuring things out, not the unwanted extra. Without any ulterior motives or comparisons to others, my students asked me to study groups, and my lecturers genuinely seemed interested in what I had to say. About a month into the semester, Grandma called one Sunday afternoon with some intriguing news. She remarked, your parents arrived at our door yesterday. A beat skipped in my chest. What were they seeking? As usual, Grandma remarked. Linda was all smiles and phony excuses as she inquired about our financial status and made a reference to Ashley's impending birthday. Your father continued to scan the house, perhaps in an attempt to determine our wealth. How did you explain it to them? Holding my breath, I asked. The line was joined by Grandpa's voice. We informed them that we had already made a financial decision. Everything will go to you. When we brought up the trust fund we've established for your graduate education, you ought to have seen Linda's expression. I could see their faces. What was their reaction to that? Grandma laughed and said, let's just say Linda's smile didn't look so genuine after that. We requested that they not return. Additionally, Ashley had the audacity to send us a list of expensive cars that she would be open to receiving as a birthday present. Is it not unbelievable? I blocked all of their phone numbers and social media accounts that night, including Ashley's. I was prepared for the unexpected expressions of love and regret, as well as offers to start over as a family. However, I no longer required their type of family. Linda tried a fresh strategy the next week. She sent a long letter after somehow obtaining my new address, likely by looking through my grandparents' mail. It was filled with justifications that they would love to be a real family once more and that they never intended to hurt me. The P.S.'s request that I speak positively to my grandparents on Ashley's birthday was the most telling. After carrying the letter to my balcony, I ripped it into small fragments and allowed the wind to whisk them away. After that, I gave my grandparents a call and helped Grandma organize her garden for the upcoming spring for an hour. Real family feels like that. No comparisons, no stipulations, just love. I occasionally think about that young child who used to ask for her parents' affection as I sat in my constitutional law class, taking notes and truly enjoying the intricacy of the subject matter. Not only would she find love, but she would also find respect, support, and the ability to be herself. I wish I could tell her that. Here, Emma, my roommate, has grown to be my best friend. I was almost adopted by her large, devoted family in Massachusetts. They offered me to spend Thanksgiving break at their family's beach cottage last weekend. I almost started crying when Emma's mother gave me a hug and remarked, "There's always room for one more at our table." My study group most likely confirms our later meeting at the library when my phone softly buzzes in my pocket. Perhaps it's Jake, the adorable guy from my psychology class who persistently requests coffee, thankfully not in my cafe. I used to work as a barista, and my family situation is complex, But he doesn't care that we've been studying together lately. Now, everything is so normal. No drama, no incessant comparisons, no sense of inadequacy. It's just me, my education, my friends, and the bright future that lies ahead. I've begun researching law schools. For once, I feel like I can dream as large as I want, and Grandpa believes I'd be a fantastic lawyer. There probably won't be any further updates from me. I've closed this chapter of my life and am prepared to start a new one, this time according to my own wishes. I've discovered that it's acceptable when the family you pick is superior to the one you were born into. I appreciate everyone who has followed my journey. You have no idea how much your support has meant. If you find yourself in a similar circumstance, keep in mind that you should not allow someone to make you feel inadequate. You will be loved for who you are by the right people. My stepsister lied that I was a prostitute and addict out of jealousy. My dad and stepmom believed her, ruined my reputation, and kicked me out. It never occurred to me, 22 degrees Fahrenheit, that a single family vacation would ruin my relationship with my entire family, yet here we are. I was a junior in college, working part-time at a coffee shop, keeping my life together, and maintaining a 3.8 GPA in business administration when this catastrophe began. During what should have been a restful spring break in Florida, everything changed. In order to strengthen our relationship, my dad, $45 million, and stepmom, $42 million, thought it would be a great idea to share a room at the beach resort with my stepsister Lisa, $19 million. Although we weren't really adversaries, we had never been close. I was only there, but she was always their golden child. The neglected one who, for some reason, was never quite good enough. The initial days were awkwardly polite. By essentially acting as though the other person didn't exist, we were able to get along. It lasted until the third day, when I used her hairbrush without asking permission, causing things to blow up over something absurdly trivial. Lisa lost it instead of just warning me not to use it. She took my beauty bag and tossed it out the window on the 4th story. Almost everything I took for the trip, including my $200 foundation, broke on the concrete below. The true silent treatment started at that point. This was not your normal adolescent cold shoulder. Lisa refused to even acknowledge me when I was directly in front of her, acting as like I didn't exist. I didn't realize this was only the beginning. First, I thought, great, at least she's not destroying my stuff anymore. Things became strange back home. My stepmother and Lisa began having these lengthy, whispered chats that would inexplicably end as soon as I entered the room. Until I observed that my dad was also acting strangely, I didn't give it much thought. He would give me these expressions, which were more like disappointment than anger. Even dismayed. It made my skin crawl, although it was difficult to tell. My stepmother began to follow up with me all the time, asking strangely detailed questions about my whereabouts, the people I was meeting, and my payment methods. She would even phone my pals to confirm my location because the surveillance became that intense. My dad never knocked on my door before, but one night he entered my room and dropped a bombshell that turned everything upside down. He stood in my doorway like a judge and stated, "We need to talk about what you've been doing." Lisa filled us in on everything, the drugs, the prostitution, everything. It was so ridiculous that I actually laughed. Me? The girl who gets anxious if she is 5 minutes late to class and color codes her planner, a drug addict and prostitute. My dad wasn't laughing though. He thought she was real. In fact, he thought his workaholic, straight-A student daughter was secretly leading a parallel life. I attempted to clarify that Lisa was lying and that it was all untrue. I presented him with my bank statements, employment schedule, and attendance records for classes, all of which demonstrated that I was who I had always been. However, he became more irate the more proof I offered. Why would Lisa fabricate a story like this? He repeated himself. She is concerned for you? Everyone is concerned about you. After that, things quickly got out of hand. While I was in class, my stepmother began searching my room for proof. They questioned my pals, kept an eye on my bank account, and even made several calls to my place of employment to check on me. Without my knowledge, they downloaded a tracking program to my phone. I didn't know until my stepmother challenged me about taking a break from class to go to a coffee shop. When my dad insisted on seeing all of my emails and social media accounts, it was the tipping point. He threatened to cease paying my tuition and expel me if I didn't comply, saying they wanted to keep an eye on my conversations to make sure I wasn't seeing clients. It dawned on me then that they would never trust me over her. They saw me as already guilty. That night, I sobbed quietly in my room as I packed up the necessities, a few items of clothing, my laptop, some critical papers, and the emergency money I had been putting aside. I was previously allowed to crash on my buddy Sarah's couch. Lisa was watching me from the hallway as I was leaving. And what do you know? She had a sly smile. She was actually grinning, like if she had won a perverse game. It wasn't easy living at Sarah's. I was lying on a couch that felt like concrete in her already small apartment. To pay for necessities, I had to take on extra work at the coffee shop. My academic performance began to suffer. Maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working 30 hours a week and sleeping on a couch is difficult. I didn't reply to my dad's one and only text, "You can come home when you're ready to admit your problems and get help." On campus, the rumors began to circulate. All of a sudden, it seemed like everyone knew about my alleged secret existence after Lisa managed to get in touch with my former roommate from my freshman year. Someone accused me of embezzling money from the Business Students Association, which led to my removal as treasurer. I was invited to have a friendly chat with my academic advisor over my lifestyle choices. It seemed like I was witnessing my reputation slowly deteriorate. At that point, Kyle, 24 million, entered my life. He frequently ordered the same thing at the coffee shop, a big Americano with extra shots. He genuinely spoke to me, unlike everyone else who acted as if I were radioactive. Not just coffee orders, but genuine talks. He questioned why I always appeared so exhausted one day following my work. I had no idea why, but I told him everything. Hours after closing, we sat in the deserted cafe and I told him everything. Are you aware of what he did? I believed by him. Just like that. Complete acceptance of my truth, without any doubt or debate. For the first time since this entire ordeal started, someone had just trusted me without asking for evidence or an explanation. Kyle owns his own apartment and works in IT. He helped me locate my own studio apartment after learning about my predicament with Sarah's couch. It's small, just a little bit larger than my previous bedroom, but it belongs to me. Because my credit wasn't good enough on my own, he even co-signed the lease. Slowly, our relationship grew. On movie nights, we would watch old comedy on his laptop until we fell asleep. He would bring me coffee during study sessions and listen to me rehearse my speeches. Little things that restored my sense of normalcy. I had someone on my side for the first time in months. Kyle made the proposal 3 months ago. He brought out a ring, which was simple, exquisite, and just like him, as we were eating Chinese takeout on the floor of my small flat. I instantly responded yes. I felt as though my life was finally moving in the right direction. In addition to supporting me and understanding me, Kyle was also aware of the truth about everything that had transpired with my family. I witnessed his parents' sincere happiness and enthusiasm over the video chat that evening when we contacted them to break the news. The contrast between their response and what I would anticipate from my own family really got to me. The true drama resumed at that point. Lisa somehow learned of the engagement. My phone was overflowing with texts from my stepmother and father in a matter of days. All of a sudden, they want reconciliation. Despite their discussions of family feelings and moving forward together, none of them ever admitted that Lisa had lied. For believing her over me, hardly one expressed regret. All they wanted was for me to move on from the incident and resume my role as a happy family. Especially poignant was my father's message. Your wedding day should be about family. Don't allow pride to prevent you from inviting everyone. Does he believe this is about that? Not the fact that they effectively labeled me a drug addict and a prostitute. Not the fact that in my own house they treated me like a criminal. Not the fact that, without even giving me an opportunity to defend myself, they decided to believe Lisa's lies? Kyle proposed that we run away. Away from the drama, somewhere calm and quiet, just the two of us. To simply go away from all of this family turmoil and begin our life together without any burdens is what I want to accomplish. A part of me, however, longs for a real wedding so I can stand in front of everyone and prove to them that I made it through. That in spite of everything they did to bring me down, I managed to create a good life. Last week, I began organizing the wedding. We're planning a modest ceremony for the spring after my graduation, nothing grand. Kyle's family has been tremendously helpful, donating their backyard for the wedding and even helping with the arrangements. I always imagined that I would go dress shopping with my stepmother, and his mom accompanied me. When I found the one, a stunning A-line dress with intricate lace details, she refrained from crying. She remarked, "You look gorgeous, sweetheart." I briefly lost sight of the fact that she wasn't my biological mother. The problem with family is that sometimes the people who select you are more likely to love you than those who are meant to love you automatically. The guest list is the most difficult portion now. Kyle adds that whether or not I invite my family is completely up to me. Today is your day, he declares. You owe them nothing at all. He is correct. I am aware that he is correct. But why is it still so painful? Why do I still find myself pondering whether or not to call them while looking at my phone? I have a box of invites on my desk, some of which bear the names of my relatives. I feel nauseous every time I gaze upon them. Given how much they contributed to your suffering, how do you invite them to share in your joy? The hardest part is that I am fully aware of the consequences if I choose not to invite Lisa. My father will not attend. My stepmother will do the same. And since that's what they do, the rest of the family will most likely support them. She is always the one they pick. Always. Emma, 26F, Kyle's sister, has been my unofficial wedding planner and sane voice during this whole ordeal. She understands it differently than other people because she experienced something similar with her ex's family. She said to me, "Your wedding day is about celebrating love, not apologizing for existing." She is correct. The focus of this day should be Kyle and I, the life we are creating together, and the family we choose to be a part of instead of the one we are born into. A mother of the bride dress in a store window, a father-daughter dance song on the radio, or the blank spots in my wedding planning binder where family photos should be are just a few examples of the little things that remind me of what I've lost every time I think I've come to terms with the absence of my family. My extended family has also begun to take sides. Aunt Susan told me over the phone yesterday that family is forever, and that I must be the stronger one. In a lengthy correspondence, my uncle discussed forgiving others and moving on. My cousins have been using passive-aggressive social media posts about loyalty and blood being thicker than water. It seems as though they are all following the same script, which portrays me as the bad guy since I didn't want my abuser to attend my wedding. During those difficult months when I was juggling extra shifts and trying to maintain my grades, none of them were there. When I had to explain to lecturers why I couldn't take the holidays at home, none of them were present. When I sobbed myself to sleep, wondering what I had done to merit being treated like a criminal by my own family, none of them were present. Because Lisa is exactly that. Someone who made a concerted effort to ruin my life. She created a whole story to keep me apart from everyone I cared about, not just one falsehood. She smiled while she watched me lose our relationship with our parents, my home, and my reputation. The most annoying thing is that they still don't realize Lisa was lying, even now that my life is finally on track. I graduated with honors in spite of everything, I got a job offer from a reputable company in the city, and I married a wonderful man. My accomplishments ought to be sufficient evidence that I wasn't who she said I was. However, they can't acknowledge they were mistaken since they are so committed to her version of events. I have therefore made the decision to invite my dad and stepmother but not Lisa. With such knowledge, people are free to do as they like. I'll walk down the aisle by myself, head held high, knowing that I didn't sacrifice my dignity to maintain harmony if they choose not to attend. After all, self-respect is ultimately what this is after all. I deserve to have a wedding day free of turmoil and anxiety, but it takes more than pride or stubbornness to declare, I deserve better than this. Instead of those who have chosen to assume the worst about me without proof, I should be surrounded by people who love and support me. I'm sick of having to make all the repairs. I'm sick of taking the lead. I'm sick of acting as though my own family's systematic rejection of me didn't hurt. I'm sick of bearing the consequences of their decisions. So, for once, I'm choosing myself. Choosing genuine love over toxic familial relationships, truth over easy lies, and happiness over duty. I'm done attempting to insert myself into a story that wasn't intended to involve me in the first place, even if it means that I'm the antagonist in their tale. Am I choosing the proper path? To be honest, I have no idea. However, I'm making a decision that feels true to who I am and what I deserve for the first time since this whole nightmare started. Kyle says he's proud of me for refusing to back down, and guess what? I'm also proud of myself. The terrified young woman who packed her bags in the middle of the night has matured into a self-assured individual who recognizes her value, realizes that true love does not necessitate putting up with abuse, and has the courage to put her own pleasure ahead of other people's expectations. Perhaps the freedom to finally be that person is the true wedding present I'm giving myself. First update. I wish I could say that things had improved since my last post, which was 6 months ago, but life has a way of catching you off guard. Everything changed when Lisa's ex-boyfriend sent me a message last month. He messaged me on Facebook and said he wanted to share something significant with me regarding the gossip Lisa was spreading. I hesitated to answer at first. Kyle and I were content to concentrate on our wedding preparations, and I've worked hard to put all the drama behind us. However, what he revealed to me clarified and exacerbated the suffering. Lisa apparently had a total breakdown after a fight with her now ex-boyfriend a few weeks ago after getting wasted at a party. She came clean about everything, including the fact that she made up all the stories that I was a drug addict and prostitute. Why? She felt that I was receiving too much attention from men at her college, which made her envious? That's all. She was jealous of the fictitious attention I allegedly received from boys at her school, which is why she ruined my relationship with my family. I didn't even go to that school. Hours passed while I sat there looking at his messages, feeling like I might pass out. Screenshots of their text exchanges, in which she had revealed everything, were sent by her ex. He even volunteered to be honest with my parents if I asked him to. To be honest though, I no longer give a damn. The harm has been done. Kyle just held me while I sobbed when I showed him the messages. I was angry, not because I was depressed. 3 years of my life, 3 years of my own family treating me like a criminal. For 3 years, I doubted myself and had to start again because my stepsister was envious. I believed that having evidence would help me feel better. I believed that there would be some sort of closure if I knew the truth. Rather, it only served to highlight how little my family actually cared for me. They made the decision to accept these baseless charges in the absence of proof. Because Lisa said so, they cut me off, tossed me out, and treated me like I had no value. This is where the situation becomes even more intricate. Lisa discovered that her ex had gotten in touch with me somehow. All of a sudden, my family started bombarding my phone with calls and texts. My stepmother emailed paragraphs about family healing and forgiveness, and my dad left a lengthy voicemail saying that Lisa is really sorry and that she's been going through a lot. The worst part. In fact, none of them expressed regret. Instead, they are promoting the idea that Lisa was troubled, and that she needs her family now more than ever. There is not a single "I'm sorry for not believing you" or "we were wrong." In relation to Kyle, I discovered that I never fully explained how we got together. About 6 months after leaving home, it happened during one of my darkest moments. After staying up all night to finish a paper, I was working the morning shift at the coffee shop, barely getting 3 hours of sleep. Every morning, Kyle arrived for his customary large Americano with additional shots. He did, however, note how worn out I appeared that day. He inquired about my well-being rather than simply taking his coffee and walking away, as most patrons do. Right there at the desk, I started crying because of his sincere concern. Julie, my manager, noticed what was going on and instructed me to take an early break. For an hour, Kyle sat with me in the deserted cafe and listened to me tell him everything. He gave me his phone at the end of my break and instructed me to call him if I ever needed someone to talk to. It was weeks before I used it. I struggled with trust after everything that happened with my family. However, I eventually called one evening after receiving yet another guilt-tripping text from my dad. Until dawn, we conversed. The thing about Kyle is that he never pushed or passed judgment. All he did was listen and encourage me. When I was unable to continue living on Sarah's couch, he assisted me in finding my first apartment. When my parents cut me off, I had to drop out for a semester, which damaged my credit, so he even co-signed the lease. In order to return to school, he assisted me in applying for grants and student loans. We were just buddies for months. He would check my assignments, assist me in practicing presentations for my business classes, and even bring me coffee while I studied in the library. Friendship gradually evolved into something more. Of all things, we were reviewing my business ethics assignment when we shared our first kiss. Kyle gave me the impression that I had everything I needed, even though I was living in a small studio apartment and barely making ends meet between work and classes. He demonstrated for me what true support looks like and what it's like to be appreciated for who you are rather than what someone else wants you to be. The drama of the wedding followed. Last week, my dad gave me a call and said he would want to escort me down the aisle, but only if I included Lisa. She's really changed, and it would mean so much to her to be there, he said. It's all about Lisa's feelings once more. Requirements of Lisa. Lisa's joy. At last, I lost it. I expressed my feelings to him in detail, including his conditional love, his repeated preference for Lisa over me, and his willingness to let her ruin my life without ever challenging her claims. I advised him that perhaps he shouldn't attend my wedding at all if Lisa's attendance meant more to him than being there for his daughter. It wasn't warmly received by him. When I refused to back down, Dad threatened to not attend the wedding without Lisa, claiming that I was tearing the family apart, and that I needed to let go of the past. My stepmother supported him by stating that real family forgives and forgets, and that they are a package deal. Kyle's family has been tremendously helpful in the interim. Last weekend, his parents hosted a simple backyard cookout for our engagement, complete with close friends and family. His dad gave a moving speech that brought everyone to tears, and his mom created this lovely photo montage of our friendship. Yes, even Kyle. Seeing them so really celebrate our love opened my eyes to what true family support looks like. Plans for the wedding. After removing all the drama, the wedding preparations are progressing rather nicely. We discovered the ideal location for the reception, a tiny garden featuring an old-fashioned greenhouse. In an effort to give me something to pass on to our future children, Kyle's mother has been teaching me their family recipes. Through all of this, his sister Emma, who will be my maid of honor, has been incredible. She has shared her personal experiences with toxic family members and has helped me realize that it's acceptable to put my mental health above my responsibilities to my family. I had my last dress fitting last week. Along with my best friend Sarah, Kyle's mother and sister were present. I didn't miss Lisa or my stepmother when I put on the dress and looked in the mirror with other women who truly cared about me. Rather, I was appreciative of the family I had chosen and the one that had chosen me in return. Because he has demonstrated to me what unconditional parental love looks like, Kyle's father will accompany me down the aisle, not because he is taking my father's place. The list of guests is short but significant. All of the attendees have supported me at my darkest moments. Relocating to Seattle after the wedding, we're relocating to Seattle for Kyle's new work. The relocation is being assisted by his firm, and we have already located an apartment. It's a new beginning in every sense of the word. A new town, a new city, and new employment prospects. Above all, it's far enough away that we won't have to worry about bumping into my relatives at the neighborhood coffee shop or grocery store. Sometimes the future we are planning seems like a dream. As we make plans for when we are both stable in our careers, we have started looking at homes in the Seattle suburbs. Kyle talks of one day starting a family and creating the kind of household we both hoped we had as children. It's simultaneously thrilling, frightening, and ideal. I blocked my entire family on all platforms yesterday, including social media, email, and phone numbers, something I should have done years ago. No more messages that make you feel guilty. No more playing with emotions. No more justifications like, but she's family. The truthful response to the question of whether I miss my family is yes. However, I miss the family I believed I had rather than the one that is real. Instead of the father who decided to assume I was a drug addict without any evidence, I miss the father who taught me how to ride a bike. Instead of going through my belongings in search of proof of crimes I never committed, I mourn the stepmother who used to assist me with my homework. Blood is thicker than water, I'm being harsh, and I'll regret this choice, several extended family members have been contacting me to say. But what do you know? The only thing I think I'll regret is squandering so many years attempting to win the affection of people who would never have chosen me in the first place. Last week the invites were sent out without my stepmother's, dad's, or Lisa's names. Even though there aren't many individuals on the guest list, they all genuinely care about me. Individuals that supported me when my own family refused to. People who unconditionally love me. My self-respect is compromised by those who encourage me without expecting anything in return. In my most recent post, someone asked if I ever considered what would have happened if I had simply forgave and moved on. The fact is, I do occasionally consider it. However, I then recall Lisa's sly smile as I was leaving the house that evening. I recall that without any proof, my father decided to assume the worst about me. I recall my stepmother treating me like a criminal, rummaging through my belongings, and phoning my place of employment. Now that I know that it was all due to Lisa's jealousy, that she deliberately attempted to ruin my life because she felt I was receiving too much attention, it only serves to affirm that I was correct to cut them off. Kyle asserts that I underestimate my own strength. He might be correct. I was the terrified girl who slept on a friend's couch 3 years ago, wondering if I would ever feel normal again. I'm now getting married to a wonderful man, starting a career, graduating with honors, and finally experiencing what true family love is like. To the one who inquired as to whether I worry about regrets, I do occasionally. However, I'm more concerned about the guilt I would experience if I allowed my family to continue to control and harm me. Walking away from individuals who only love us when it suits them is sometimes the bravest thing we can do. I'm now satisfied with the way things have worked out, and our wedding is in 6 weeks. It's not the wedding I envisioned as a child. No mother of the bride speech, no father-daughter dance, and no large family portraits with everyone dressed alike will take place. However, it will be genuine. There will be someone there who supported me, who had faith in me, who had chosen me. Fixing a family that never truly wanted to be healed is something I'm done with. I'm tired of having to be the one who must understand, forgive, and put everyone else's sentiments ahead of my own. I'm tired of being Lisa's backup daughter, the one who is only valuable when she doesn't require attention. Since I really don't have anything more to say, this is my final update. Lisa is no longer the subject of my story. It has nothing to do with my stepmother, father, or the family that didn't pick me. It has to do with the family Kyle and I are creating. About the love I discovered in the most unlikely locations. About the strength I was unaware I possessed. In 6 weeks, I will tie the knot with a man who truly loves me. For the first time in years, I'm not anxiously waiting for the other shoe to drop as we begin a new life in a new place. All I'm doing is living, loving, and at last, being free. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has supported me and followed my path. Your words of support gave me the courage to defend my position. Additionally, it's acceptable to leave if you're dealing with toxic family members. Making your own decision is acceptable. Finding happiness on your own terms is okay. There are instances when the family we build is more authentic than the one we are born into. And it's not just acceptable. It's stunning. I legally bought 5 classic cars from a widow. Someone posing as her grandson tried to sue but was exposed as her granddaughter's ex. Original post. I'm close friends with a coworker, and we've helped his mother in her 80s with house maintenance. His mother's neighbor, I'll call her Elaine, was in her 90s in 2016, when Elaine's husband who was in the home died. While doing maintenance on my coworker's mother's house, I drove there in my 1975 Falcon, and Elaine came out to ask me to have a look at some cars I might like that had belonged to her husband. I won't go into detail except 3 were in good drivable condition and worth a decent figure, and 2 more were ruined but good parts cars. At the time I couldn't afford anywhere near what they were genuinely worth. 2 are at least in the top 5 desirable Australian classics. I told her what they could fetch on the open market, but she was happy to take $5,000 for all 5 cars, well under their value. She wanted to make sure they went to someone who would appreciate them, and I paid for and collected them a week later, and I still have the 3 good ones, 2 now on historic registration and the other in storage. Elaine passed away in the middle of this year, and her grandson is on the warpath over the cars. He's found my contact details and phoned me several times threatening to sue for effectively stealing the cars from his grandmother, and has turned up at my front door once demanding the return of the cars. I have not been served or received anything in writing from him in a legal sense, only his business card, which sounds dodgy. I've verified he's an actual lawyer as he claims through a website of his employer, which lists him with a photo as specializing in commercial and insurance law just like his business card. I'd have expected if there was a real legal issue with the ownership of the cars it would be in relation to the grandmother's estate proceedings, and I'd be contacted by mail by someone acting as executor, not via phone calls and doorstop visits by one angry smug bastard acting like it's happening between me and him alone. Since I'm not a lawyer and my presumptions could be completely out, I'm posting here. If need be I could now afford the market price of all the cars. Is the grandson likely to have a case and should I find a lawyer of my own? Relevant comments RCG Nal. But if Elaine's husband left them to her in his will, she was free to do with them as she pleased, ergo, the grandson has no claim. He'd be banking on your uncertainty of that to strong-arm you into cutting a deal. Don't ignore any official summons or claims, but you can safely tell him to sod off over the phone. If you want to get really petty, you could contact his law firm and complain about him, but as long as he wasn't intimating that his employer was in any way involved, it's none of their business, so they could tell you cool, so what? OOP. Thanks. Banking on my uncertainty is a good way to describe the vibe I'm getting from him. He's not exactly throwing his law firm's name around, but it is on the business card he gave me. On what the cars are, I feel more comfortable describing them now after reading the responses here. One registered is an XY GT replica in nice shape built from a Fairmont. The other registered is an XB Fairmont coupe in excellent original condition, and the third I'm still working on getting back on the road is an XA sedan Falcon 506. The last 2 were wrecks and have already been parted out and the good bits kept. A spare XA sedan and an XW that looks like it had spent 30 years as yard art. The XW collapsed at the torque boxes and plenum while being trailered and nearly came off in 2 pieces, but worth it for the glass and trim alone. Update. I spoke with my coworker about the issue and he talked with his mother who clued me into her neighbor, Elaine from my previous post, not having any grandsons. My coworker's mother is still in contact with Elaine's son and daughter as they own and still work on Elaine's old house next door. She put them in contact with me. They wanted to know who it was who was actually threatening what about the cars as Elaine has no grandsons, and we spoke. They identified the lawyer grandson as an old ex. He was once a partner of but not married to one of Elaine's granddaughters for a few years. He's also known to be in a lot of debt, which might explain desperate hunting for valuable items. Elaine's son and daughter reiterated that their dad had left instructions to Elaine for the cars to go to someone who'd cherish them and they were happy they did, and glad to hear from me that they're still being looked after together. I haven't contacted the faux grandson's law firm yet. I have a lot of evidence of his misrepresentations to me and after googling NSW law I'm not 100% sure of the legality of all of it, especially about sharing my home security and dashcam recordings directly to the other firm, or even speaking directly to them. I'll go through my own legal representation there as a filter on what I need to give them to make sure they know of his behavior linked to their firm. Small update, fake grandson came around twice more. I now have multiple records of him visiting my residence, threats via text and many phone calls to me after I asked him to not contact me again except in writing. Complaints have been made through my lawyer to his firm and relevant regulatory bodies. I informed him of the complaints on Thursday and reiterated not to contact me again, and I haven't heard a peep from him since. Last update, fake grandson had already been dismissed from the firm before my lawyer and I complained, and he already has complaints against him for other reasons. I cut ties with my best friend after discovering she slept with my boyfriend. She threatened suicide, and my family pressured me to forgive her. Original post, and I don't care, I haven't reached out. She slept with my boyfriend behind my back. We're both 20F and we've been friends since reception, 4 to 5 years old, UK thing. She was my sister, my rock, we stood by each other through everything. When my parents divorced, she was there to offer a shoulder for me to cry on. When her grandmother died, I was there keeping her afloat throughout high school. I'd been dating my boyfriend, 21 million, for about 3 years. We started dating in 6th form, a version of UK college, and he was my first serious relationship. I introduced him to my family, he was many of my firsts. He was sweet, a little awkward being a gamer guy, but he treated me to date nights and always made me feel special. Maybe this is me being young and dumb, but I thought I'd marry this guy someday. This was something I told my best friend. Well, about a month ago while my boyfriend was in the shower, I saw a text notification pop up on his phone. We look at each other's notifications all the time, so I grabbed his phone to see it. It was from her, asking if they were still on for tonight and if she should wear his favorite dress. He told me he was hanging out with friends and going drinking. Him going drinking with friends wasn't unusual, so I never thought anything of it, but in hindsight I wonder how much of him going out was with friends and how much of it was going out with her. I saved screenshots of their conversations. I sent them to myself. I showed him the messages when he came out of the bathroom and demanded he explain himself about them. I couldn't contain how upset and angry and hurt I was. An argument ensued where I told him he was disgusting and I left his place. Shortly after arriving home, I started getting bombarded with calls and texts from my best friend. I answered none of her calls. I couldn't stomach hearing her voice, but her texts ranged from, "She never meant to hurt me. My boyfriend hit on her first. It didn't mean anything." Then it got angry, saying I should hear her out. If I was a real friend, I would take her calls. I'm being petty and childish for not listening to her side. Then back to sadness, saying I was her closest friend in the world and she didn't want to lose me. My boyfriend was strangely quiet during this time. After a few days I got myself together enough to send them both messages. Maybe it was cowardly, but I didn't have the strength to call them. I told my now ex-boyfriend that we were done and I won't give cheaters any chances with me. He responded by trying to call me, but after the 3rd or 4th attempt, he gave up. He sent me a final message saying it wasn't that big of a deal, that they'd just fooled around, but agreeing he didn't want to date me anymore. My ex-best friend was more persistent after I told her I wanted nothing to do with her. Day after day I'd get messages and calls from her. Demanding to talk. Demanding we resolve this. Demanding I not say anything to anyone. Saying she's stopped seeing him. Saying she'll kill herself if I don't talk to her. Really fucked up shit. I ended up confiding to a mutual friend about what was going on because I was seriously beginning to wonder if I was being a bitch. This friend reassured me that my feelings were justified. However, I wasn't expecting this friend to spread around what happened. The gossip spread like wildfire, and a few days ago my ex-best friend tried to take her life. I said nothing. I haven't visited her in the hospital. I haven't sent any messages to her family. Now her older sister keeps messaging me, telling me I'm a heartless bitch for leaving her at her lowest. For not trying to prevent this and that everyone makes mistakes, and that her sister didn't intentionally hurt me. Maybe it does make me a heartless bitch, but I don't care. I'm relieved she survived, but I'll never forgive her. I'll never forgive her betrayal. She destroyed our friendship when she slept with my boyfriend. Relevant comments. OP needs to move forward in a healthy way without being bitter about her ex and the best friend up. Thank you, I know. I don't think I'm over what they did to me. 3-year relationship and a 16-year friendship down the drain. I'll look into therapy, but between schoolwork and a part-time job it might be difficult. It's stupid because I wasn't feeling guilty that she had attempted to take her life, but after what her sister said I was starting to feel guilty. For not feeling guilty? If that makes sense? It was really getting to me, so I had to tell someone. I'm glad she survived, but I'm not looking forward to the next few days. I've already gotten messages from her cousin today. Commenter 1. Good, Don't contact her or her family. That's done for. You're not responsible for her mental health. And make better friends, not gossiping ones like the one who told everyone. Just cut them off. And if your family tries to pressure you to be friends with her, warn them that you're not above going LC with them. Edit, block them all as well. Ope. Unfortunately, I don't think the friend I told had intended for it to get so bad. She really helped me understand that I wasn't being an awful person for not giving my ex-BFF a second chance. She cheered me up and made me feel better, but she told the rest of our friend group, and after that it was like Pandora's box. I've blocked my ex and my ex-BFF. I've blocked her sister as well, and it's looking like I'll need to block one of her cousins. This makes me a little sad. I was always so close with her cousins. My dad agrees with me 100% and told me I was doing the right thing. When I told my mom, I could tell she was disappointed and tried suggesting I talk to my ex-BFF, but I shut that down real quick and she backed off. Update 1. Hey again. It's been a while. First, I want to thank everyone for all of their comments and support. In hindsight, I know now I wasn't being a bitch, but in the moment when I was being bombarded by texts and calls from her family, it's hard not to let those thoughts mess with your head. I didn't know if I was going to post an update, but some things have happened, so this might get a little long. Sorry. Giving fake names, ex-BFF is Nikki. Her older sister is Tammy. Ex-BF is Josh. I'll name anyone relevant as I go. So I mentioned in a comment that my mom wanted to speak to me later that day. I had a few replies warning me that she would try to pressure me into forgiving Nikki, and they were right. She came over to my dad's that evening and wanted a conversation in private. She asked if I'd spoken to Nikki yet. I said no. She asked if I was going to. I said no. I was trying to be as firm as possible because I knew what she was about to do. She asked, "Don't you think you should?" My response was, "No. I don't see why I should." I sent her a final message almost a month ago. This is where things began to really go south in the conversation. Mom. Love, she's in the hospital right now. She needs all the support she can get. You're meant to be her friend. I didn't even know about her condition until her mother called me. Me? Really? I'm meant to be her friend after she slept with Josh behind my back. I didn't say anything about her because I didn't want to talk about her. Mom. Are you really going to hold a silly grudge? I understand she hurt you, but she's hurting so much more right now, love. Me. She's hurting? Mom. Yes, you both are. I raised you to be a kind, forgiving person. Why can't you forgive her? Me. What? Like how Dad should have forgiven you? This wasn't my finest moment. I didn't bring it up before because it wasn't relevant, but the reason why my parents divorced was due to infidelity on Mom's end. And it wasn't only a one-time thing, not that it matters even if it had been, but my mom always believed Dad should have just forgiven her. I admit this was a low blow for me, and the conversation spiraled into an argument from there, with both of us saying some not so kind things to each other. Eventually I decided the conversation was over because we were just going around in circles and heading into yelling territory, so I told her to leave and I'll try talking to her again when we've both calmed down. When she was leaving, she said this. I hope you're not as cruel as your father. I'm typically not an angry person, but this infuriated and hurt me. I lived 50-50 between my parents. They both made sure I had everything I could need or want, but she felt her situation and struggles were undeserved. Dad never helped with bills or payments that didn't involve me. She expected more. Cheaters always do. I didn't say anything when she left, I just blocked her number and social media accounts and cried. She cared more about the girl who had hurt her daughter than said daughter. She realized pretty quickly what had happened and came back the next day, but Dad told her I didn't want to talk to her, true, and she had to leave. It took maybe half an hour before she finally left. The next few days she kept trying to reach me through other people, but I stayed silent. The Friday after my post, I decided I felt calm enough to talk to her and unblocked her. We spoke over the phone, which wasn't as exciting as above. Basically it was her apologizing and telling me she was wrong for trying to force me to forgive Nikki, that she'll respect my decision but tried to suggest I think about it. I very firmly told her I was not forgiving Nikki. She just said okay. Things didn't really feel the same with us. I couldn't bring myself to be as chatty with her as I was before, and it didn't help that she kept giving me updates about Nikki. The first time she did it, she told me Nikki had been put on a 72-hour psych hold, assessed and eventually released. I told her I didn't want any updates on Nikki's situation. I won't stop her from checking in, but I didn't want to be involved. She complained and said she thought I'd want to visit her, but I threatened to block her again if she kept pushing, and she shut up. Nothing was mentioned about Nikki for a couple of weeks before Mom again broke my boundary and brought her up. telling me about how Josh had stopped talking to her and how Nikki needed a shoulder to cry on. I again told her I didn't want to know and this was her last chance not to bring her up or I would cut her from my life. She complained again but eventually promised it wouldn't happen again. Maybe I should have learned from my mistakes because I know my mother. She doesn't take no for an answer. It was really quiet for a while. My friends and I had all basically carried on from what happened and even though I know a couple of them still occasionally talk to Nikki, they never bring her up around me or tell her, I hope, how I'm doing. I thought I could finally close this chapter on my life, but nope. Today my mother called me and asked if I wanted to get lunch. I hadn't seen her in a while, so what was the harm? I head to the Weatherspoons we planned to eat at and who do I find sitting with my mom? Nikki and her sister Tammy. As soon as Nikki sees me, she gets up and tries to hug me but I just raise a hand and take a step back, and this girl has the audacity to look upset. Mom immediately knows she's fucked up because she's scrambling with all of the excuses. It hurts to see you two fall apart like this, you were so close. I thought you'd forgive her by now. And my favorite, she made a mistake, she misses you. During this time, Nikki has been quiet and I can see Tammy's glaring at me. I'm just so fucking angry and upset. I honestly didn't think she'd pull something like this. I wanted to leave and cry but I looked at Nikki and said, for someone who's made a mistake, she sure hasn't apologized for it, yet? She had this guilty look on her face and muttered something about me having her blocked and having no way to. I said, is that really all you have to say? And she just looked at me confused. I was done. I turned to leave and her sister started yelling after me, saying that I owed Nikki a second chance with all the trauma I put her through. While Nikki was begging me to just listen to her and talk to her. I told them all to fuck off and never contact me again and left. I managed to get out of there before Tammy started a fight and went home where I sent my mom a text a while ago telling her she'd better lose my number because she no longer has a spot in my life. Then I blocked her and just cried. My dad's been doing his best to comfort me, but it just hurts so bad that my own mother did this to me. So that's where things are at right now. I'll update if anything else happens, but this whole situation really fucking sucks. Relevant comments. Commenter 1, good on you for knowing your own morals and thoughts and not letting anyone else tell you how to think. I hope your dad supports you in this. Oop. My dad has been my rock through this. He's always had my back. We've spent the last few hours having some drinks and chatting just to help take my mind off things. My dad's to thank for that. He taught me to stand up for myself and told me, being kind doesn't mean being a wet towel. Makes me sad why he had to learn that lesson. Why was OP still in touch with her mother when she cheated on OP's dad? OP, because she was still my mom. I was a teenager when my parents divorced, and it was my father who encouraged me to maintain a relationship with her. New update. Hey there, everyone, I'm the girl who made the my ex-best friend attempted to take her life posts. I didn't think labeling this post like that really fit. I first want to apologize for taking so long to give you an update and to also thank you for your kind words. I've not been able to reply to many messages, and I've had a lot, but I've taken the time to read through every single one and I appreciate every single one of you. This Christmas has been amazing. I spent it with my family, with my dad. I went out Boxing Day night with my friends to party hard and regret it harder the following day. I'm in a much better place than I was back in December 2023. That's kind of why I struggled to give you all an update, because around Christmas plus New Year's 2023 I was not in a good place. I really needed to focus on myself and work on getting myself in a better place. As of January 2024, I have been no contact with my mother. Unfortunately, I've seen her since then, and I've done my best to avoid talking to her on the 3 occasions I've had to be in the same place as her. Not out of choice, mind you, but it is what it is. During Christmas 2023, she had expected that I was spending it with her and her side of the family. Given the events at that time, this was obviously not happening and my dad told her as much. She lost her mind. She refused to take no as an answer leading up to Christmas. To the point Dad and I left for my paternal aunt's house on Christmas Eve to spend the night there. According to a neighbor, my birth giver showed up pretty early in the morning to catch us leaving, but was irate to learn we already weren't there. Thankfully, my aunt had moved house quite recently, so my mother didn't know the new address. But we came home to parcels completely destroyed on our porch the following Boxing Day. There was even a Christmas card labeled to me, but inside was a horrible letter from my mother, describing me as the worst daughter on the planet. That honestly destroyed me and I spent New Year's a mess. It's difficult cutting off your own mother. I spent half of January 2024 trying to fix things with her, but it came to a head when I realized I was the only one forced to compromise. I finally cut off contact, and it's been that way since. There's been more between then and now, but I think those are incidents I'll post on my Reddit page or in the comments of this post to prevent it from getting too long. In terms of Nikki, I've heard she's doing better. We've not spoken since my mother's lunch escapade, but she's found a job and, according to a mutual friend, found a new circle. Despite everything that she's put me through, I'm happy for her. It's almost 2 a.m. here in the UK, so if I suddenly stop responding to comments, I fall asleep. My sister flirted with my boyfriend and attacked me when confronted. Drama erupted at my wedding when my parents forced a reconciliation. I'm 28, and my sister is 26. We haven't communicated for about 6 years because of a terrible tragedy, which I will explain in a bit. As we grew up, my parents, for whatever reason, never discouraged our intense sibling rivalry. They urged us to compete instead. In retrospect, I don't think that was a wise decision because it made us incredibly jealous of one another. If they had dealt with this sooner, maybe our relationship would have been better. We could sometimes put aside our differences while we were younger, but as we grew older, our hostility increased. When we got to high school, we didn't talk much to one another, and we both liked it that way. I only saw my sister when I returned home from college after high school. Compared to being with someone who was disagreeable all the time, this was a relief. I started dating my fiancé around the time I was about to graduate. After 3 years of friendship, he finally worked up the nerve to ask me out right before I graduated. I said yes as we had been friends for years and I thought he was amazing. He and I moved in together after I graduated. After 3 months of dating, I made the decision to present him to my parents one weekend. It just so happened that my sister, who had just begun college, chose to stay at home that same weekend. With both of us present at the same moment, it was already a formula for disaster. My life was going great at that point. I had my own apartment, a job, and a cute partner. But things weren't going as smoothly for my sister. She was disappointed that she couldn't get into her first choice of college and had to settle for her second. Later, my parents explained that she kept returning home so often because she was struggling to make friends at college. I could tell my sister wasn't happy when I told my parents about my relationship. As I introduced him to him, she pouted in the background. When I introduced her, she instantly turned on her charm, despite the fact that my partner was aware of the strained relationship I had with her. It felt weird, but I tried not to let it upset me. Then, however, things became much stranger. While we were all sitting around, my sister continued trying to chat to my boyfriend since she was too interested in his life. Despite our discomfort, neither of us spoke. Then she went too far. During dinner, she started to overtly flirt with him in front of me. She was obviously trying to irritate me. She wasn't subtle. I attempted to ignore my family's turmoil for a while since I didn't want my partner to notice. I finally lost it though, as she went on. I became enraged as she was openly flinging herself at him. I informed her that her behavior was disgusting and told her to stop. She continued to speak to him while rolling her eyes. That's when I lost it. I screamed at her, telling her that since she was making him feel uncomfortable, she should respect him as he was my guest. Even worse was her reaction. Helping my boyfriend realize he had alternatives and that he deserved better, she remarked with a sly smile. I was angry at the way she stated it. We began yelling at one another, and I became so irate that I branded her a loser and said she was resentful because she wasn't performing as well as I was. That struck a chord. The words had a profound effect on her, and before I could respond, she snatched my hair and gave me a slap across the table. I was too shocked to react at first because we hadn't fought physically since middle school. However, the situation swiftly turned into a full-fledged altercation. My boyfriend and our parents had to break us up because we had gotten so violent. We were both bruised and scratched by the end, yet we were still yelling at one another. After attempting to reassure me the entire time, my partner was able to finally pull me away, get me into the car, and drive us home. I was glad to have him on my side since without him, the conflict might have lasted even longer. I didn't speak to my sister at all after that happened. We had argued before, but it had never been this savage. This was the last straw for me. It was already easier living apart from her, and I no longer felt compelled to think of her as a member of my family. Even though my sister wasn't prepared to apologize, my parents called me the day after the fight to let me know they had chastised her and hoped we might work things out in the end. I informed them that I was not interested in finding a solution. I wanted our connection to stay as it was, non-existent, and I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. I reminded my parents that they were partially responsible when they attempted to persuade me otherwise. They had, in a sense, encouraged our intense sibling rivalry while we were growing up and had never addressed it. My sister and I didn't want to be around each other, so they weren't shocked. They disagreed with me, so we got into a fight about it. They admitted their error and apologized over the phone a few days later. I've forgiven them, even though it felt a little empty at the time. I didn't want to break up contact with my parents, even if I had decided to stop talking to my sister. That incident happened 6 years ago, and I haven't spoken to my sister since. As long as they don't put any pressure on me to get back together, I don't mind if she and my parents continue to have a regular contact. We don't talk much, and even on holidays, we avoid each other, even though I've seen her at family get-togethers. That's how I like it. We don't get along, and everyone in the family knows it, but nobody knows why. They just know that we got into a fight and that none of us has looked good ever then. After 6 years of concealing the information, I eventually came clean at my bridal shower. Because we weren't precisely adhering to traditional norms, my maid of honor only invited close friends and family, including my fiancé, to the ceremony. My parents surprised me by inviting my estranged sister as well. What they were thinking, I don't know. I was in disbelief when my folks showed up with her. My sister appeared just as shocked to see me. And tense standoff occurred as the room went silent. My parents came over to us after what seemed like an eternity and said that enough time had gone by and that they hoped we could get back together. They thought we were now older and wiser. My sister's look made it obvious that our parents had deceived her into going. I told my parents that on such a significant day, they had no right to surprise me. I gently but forcefully requested my parents to accompany my sister on her departure before she could say anything. Instead of leaving, they insisted that I move on from the past while pretending that nothing important had occurred. Their contemptuous behavior angered me. I gave a detailed account of the full incident that occurred 6 years ago in order to correct the record. I asked whether everyone in the room believed I could just forgive and move on after making sure everyone knew exactly what had transpired. I then went to my parents and asked, would you still believe it was so easy to let go if I had married someone else? Of this, things would have turned out differently if I had wed someone else. However, when I first took him home to meet the family, my sister had shamelessly flirted with the man I was marrying. In front of me, she had done it without guilt, as if he were a competitor in a competition he had never agreed to. She did all of that, but more than that, she attacked me first because I called her out on it and called her a loser. It was traumatic for me because I had never before experienced someone attempting to physically harm me in that manner. She never apologized to me in the 6 years that followed, acting as though nothing had happened. I didn't feel pressured to let go of the past or forgive her. I thought it was more crucial to keep myself safe and keep someone like her out of my life. It was ridiculous of my parents to think they could just take her to my bridal shower and expect us to get back together. Luckily, my sister recognized her error and departed before my parents could continue their argument. I imagined my sister wasn't happy about being duped too, so my mother followed her, probably to please her. For a brief period, my father stayed with me, but I told him that he had let me down and that I didn't want to speak to him at that time. I was acting like a brat, and he got annoyed and accused me of being unreasonable, saying that it was pointless to cling to something that had happened 6 years before. I told him to go because I didn't want to quarrel with him, even though I didn't think I was being a brat. After a few minutes, he departed. I had to take a few moments to gather myself after that since I was so overwhelmed. Thankfully, I had the support of my fiancé and maid of honor, and I quickly returned to my normal self. Since I needed a diversion and didn't want to worry about my dad or sister, everyone else complied. We carried on with the festivities as if nothing had occurred. My fiancé and I went home after the encounter and didn't talk about it again. Since the incident, which happened around 5 days ago, I had not heard from my parents, but I was fine with it. After what they did, I thought we should take a break. I didn't anticipate hearing from them immediately, but they did finally get in touch, not to apologize, but to blame me for my sister's situation. My mom called this morning. When I replied, she told me to get in touch with my aunt and make sure she gave my sister the job she had been talking about. My mother was upset and scared, and I had no idea what she was talking about, so I told her to calm down. She continued by explaining that layoffs and downsizing at her prior workplace had left my sister unemployed for about 6 months. A few weeks ago, she realized she could no longer afford the rent and had to return to live with our parents. She had been looking for work, but she had not been able to locate a position that paid enough or that she enjoyed. My aunt, who was starting a new business, and my mother had talked about this. My aunt had originally decided to make my sister the head of marketing because she had prior marketing experience. But after the bridal shower incident, when I told my aunt what had happened 6 years earlier, she stopped responding and finally canceled the offer. I wasn't shocked because I had always been my aunt's favorite, and I thought that was a reasonable explanation. My aunt replied that it was clear from her knowledge of the incident I recounted that my sister had serious anger management problems when my mother forwarded her mail to me. The fact that my sister had not even apologized during the bridal shower infuriated my aunt. In addition, my aunt said that although she had originally decided to hire my sister due to their familial ties, she had just interviewed a better qualified applicant for the position. Instead, she made the decision to offer the job to the better qualified candidate. That made perfect sense to me, and I was really happy that my aunt had changed her mind. After receiving my aunt's note, I told my mother that there was nothing I could do about it. I wanted to avoid my aunt feeling pressured to recruit my sister just because they were related, as I had witnessed the detrimental impacts of nepotism in the workplace. It was evident that my aunt had identified a more qualified candidate for the position, which was the true reason my sister was not employed. I didn't want to get involved because my aunt was in charge of this. My mother became irate when I promised her that I wouldn't attempt to harm my sister's standing or reputation in the family. At my bridal shower, she started screaming at me, saying that I had ruined my sister's chances by bringing up the past. Considering how much it would affect my sister, she said I didn't need to bring up the incident at my bridal shower. She said I deliberately portrayed my sister as unstable and evil in order to win the family's pity and position myself as the nice one. Just so you know, when I described the incident, I wasn't concealing anything. I freely acknowledged that prior to her physical assault, I had called her a loser. But I don't think her violent response was justified by the name-calling. My mother's accusation that I brought up the incident purely to harm my sister's reputation was unfair. After giving it some thought, I hung up the phone and blocked my parents. I wondered if it was the correct thing to bring up the past. My mother had claimed over the phone that I hadn't given my sister a fair opportunity to demonstrate her growth over the years and that it was unkind of me to bring up the fight, particularly when it cost her a job offer. First update. Hello Reddit. I want to thank everyone who took the time to leave a comment before I talk about what transpired after my first post. Thank you very much for your guidance and good remarks. Since my sister had previously been prohibited from contacting me for 6 years, my parents were unable to get in touch with me directly after I blocked them. They chose to visit my home since they had no other choice. With my wedding just a few weeks away, I was overburdened and very busy getting ready. I had just gotten home from work that day, and my fiancé and I had a last-minute wedding dress fitting planned. I instructed them to go when they showed there without an invitation. We knew that if we opened the door, they would continue the talk and aggravate me much more, so we didn't want to interact. They remained even after I threatened to contact the police. To be honest, I didn't want to contact the police since I didn't want to handle the problem that way and it felt over the top. We agreed to let them in for a little talk, hear their side of the story, and end it there after talking it over with my fiancé. After deciding on a course of action, we let them in and warned them to hurry because we had other obligations. Thankfully, my folks quickly got to the point. They clarified that my behavior at the bridal shower was the reason my aunt had withdrawn her offer of employment to my sister. They said that I was to blame for my sister's situation and asked that I contact my aunt to make sure she was hired. I paid attention, but I didn't want to say it again. Since it was the same argument, I told them that since I had already called my mother, there was nothing I could do about it. It didn't make sense for them to come to my house and talk about it again since they knew I was busy and getting married in a few weeks. I was interrupted by my sister, who said they had come for reasons other than the job offer. This was our first chat in 6 years, so I was surprised. She continued by saying that she felt obligated to apologize, which is why she chose to come. At the moment, I was unsure of how to feel. To be honest, I had severe misgivings and didn't trust her intentions. I chose to be straightforward and inquired as to whether she sincerely wanted to apologize or if she was merely doing so in hopes of getting the job. I informed her that because I couldn't help her, there was no use in wasting her breath if it was only about the work. Although she appeared a little taken aback by my candor, she said that our parents were present to talk about the job and that she had come to apologize. Even my parents appeared astonished when I looked at them, indicating that they hadn't discussed this. But my sister seemed unconcerned. She reaffirmed that she had no interest in the job and was only come to apologize. She claimed to have thought back on her behavior during the previous 6 years, but she had always found an excuse not to apologize. She was unable to deny that she had mistreated me after the bridal shower. Her tone and manner conveyed that she was serious, even if my fiancé and I were still processing the situation. She said that she had harbored resentment toward me since she was a young child, because she felt compelled to compete with me constantly. She felt guilty for squandering her childhood and adolescence on that rivalry, now that she saw how pointless it was in the real world. She was sad that we could have become friends, given that I had tried to get in touch with her multiple times. Because she always viewed me as a rival, she acknowledged pushing me away. It was very overwhelming to hear her speak all of this, and I'm ashamed to say that I started crying as she expressed her emotions. She then turned to face my fiancé and expressed regret for the way she had behaved toward him during their one and only meeting. She admitted that it was long past for her to apologize and that her preoccupation with outdoing me had caused her to lose sight of who she had become. When she was done, she didn't wait for a reply. She merely said that she needed to express herself and that we didn't have to forgive her. She promised not to disturb us again now that she had. Only my parents, my fiancé, and I remained in the room after she departed. We sat there in startled silence, trying to take in what had just transpired, none of us expecting this. My parents eventually departed without saying anything, and my fiancé and I went as scheduled to my fitting. Until we arrived home, we didn't talk about any of it. We started discussing my sister's apology approximately 30 minutes ago. Despite the 6-year delay, I thought my sister's apology was incredibly sincere and mature. My fiancé and I are still processing things, so we aren't sure if we should forgive her. I'm glad she recognized we could have been friends, and I've unblocked her, but I need more time to reassure her that everything is really okay. Second update. I neglected to include my parents in my last update. Since their visit a few days ago, they have not gotten in touch with us. Since they haven't expressed regret for what they did, we want to stay away from them. Because they encouraged rather than resolved the conflict between my sister and me, I consider them responsible. Their disregard for my sisters and my sentiments is evident, even after years of conflict and my attempts at forgiveness. We'll let them know in a few days that they won't be invited to the wedding. Third update. I was married last week, and it was a stunning, ideal day. My parents were not present, as was to be expected. They sent an email stating that they would not be attending, stating that they no longer wanted to be a part of our lives because my sister and I had stigmatized them. I don't mind if that's what they decide to do. On a more positive note, I contacted my sister prior to the wedding to welcome her to the event and to accept her apology. Having her there made the day even more memorable, and she accepted with grace. I'm happy to be getting back in touch with her, even if it's unbelievable to consider how far we've come. My husband and I are excited about our honeymoon, and life is better than ever. Entitled Karen tries to argue after I ban her kids from the water park. Here's how I shut her down. Working as a lifeguard at a water park, I'm no stranger to dealing with entitled guests, but this incident pushed my patience to the limit. Recently, I was promoted to head guard, a role that brought new responsibilities and challenges. Little did I know that one particular family would make my day unforgettable, and not in a good way. The day started like any other. I handled the usual head guard tasks. Setting up the water systems, coordinating lifeguard rotations, and preparing the park for its 9 a.m. opening. Things were running smoothly until late morning, when a family arrived. A mom, dad, young daughter, and 3 teenage boys. The boys, who looked to be around 17 or 18, immediately started causing trouble. Complaints about their behavior trickled in all day. They jumped between different areas of the park, making it difficult to catch them in the act, but the reports from guests and lifeguards piled up. By 4 p.m., during the second shift, things came to a head. A loud double whistle, a signal for accidents or urgent situations, pulled me from my duties in the first aid room. I hurried to find one of my lifeguards, who also happens to be a close friend, being yelled at by an irate mother. Enter Karen. I approached and asked, "Can I help you with something?" Karen immediately began screaming at me. "Yes, this jerk banned my son and his friends from this side for no reason." Before she could say more, I interrupted with, "Let's watch our language, please." Karen sighed dramatically and continued, "This guard banned my boys unfairly." Recognizing the group of boys who had caused chaos all day, I told the lifeguard, "Watch your water. I'll handle this." Turning to Karen, I said, "Ma'am, I'll be honest with you. Your son and his friends aren't banned from the slide." She tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand and continued, "They're banned from the park." That's when Karen exploded. She yelled, demanded explanations, and called me every name in the book. After she calmed down enough to speak, she asked, "Why?" "They haven't done anything wrong," I replied firmly. "Actually, they've broken nearly every rule we have and have been causing problems all day." Scoffing, she demanded specifics. "What have they really done? What could they possibly have done?" "Well," I said, "they've gone down every slide the wrong way, jumped out halfway down, nearly hit other guests while playing dodgeball with basketballs, which is against the rules, and endangered themselves, my guards, and everyone around them. They could have caused serious injuries, like concussions or broken bones." Karen, still defiant, argued, "Well, we paid for a room for 2 nights. "That's not my problem," I replied, now visibly annoyed. "You, your husband, and your daughter are welcome to stay and enjoy the park. But your boys have to leave. They can either be taken home by one of you, or they can stay in the room for the rest of the night. Karen was stunned, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. But before she could speak, I cut her off. Ma'am, this isn't a debate. You're in no position to argue. You're in a position to comply. If they don't leave in the next 10 minutes, they will be removed. Karen stood frozen for a moment, then stormed off toward the hot tub. Realizing she had no intention of using the time I'd given her, I called security over the radio. Head guard to security desk, code yellow, I announced, a code for guest removal. Security arrived, found the boys, and escorted them to their parents and then to their room. I'll admit, I may have come off as a bit harsh, but Karen's combative attitude left me no choice. Because of her, I was late for my chemical check and completely done with the situation. Her earlier behavior, including calling my friend and employee a horrible name, cemented her place on my no-tolerance list. In the end, standing my ground and shutting her down was immensely satisfying. Karen thought she could bully her way out of consequences, but she was dead wrong. She absolutely deserved the outcome, and I have no regrets. Stepdad takes my mom and his kids on vacation, leaving me home alone. I move to my dad's, and everything falls apart. I'm a 16-year-old guy in high school. 2 years ago, my mother married Eddie, my stepdad. Eddie is 42 years old. My mother is 40. My parents never entered into marriage. Actually, I was the product of a very brief fling following college that they assumed would last a few months. Then my mother started to conceive. She hired me since she wanted to end the pregnancy without calling for termination. My dad has shared custody of me since he too wants to participate in my life. Every month I move residences, spending the year alternately with my mother and my father, therefore distributing my time equally between them. I love my parents. I know both of them have given quite a lot of sacrifices for me to remain close by. The first and most important one is that they have spent years living in the same city, hence I wouldn't find the travel between the two houses to be too challenging. Previously unaware of this, now I see that both of my parents had to forfeit several chances to progress in their professions in order to stay in the same city and live near each other, all for my benefit. Thanks to me, my mother also had to turn away countless guys who were totally in love with her. Her priorities should have been parenting me rather than getting married and juggling her personal life, work, and husband. Eddie helped me to learn all these things. He is not precisely the ideal stepfather one could want for. To help me to accept him, my mother had to go over all of this with me. If she could make so many sacrifices for my sake, she believes I should be able to at least somewhat repay the favor and embrace Eddie. Since I never asked her to make such sacrifices, I find it difficult to properly grasp how that reasoning holds. She could have readily ended the pregnancy or allowed my father take over completely rearing me. Still, I love her and want her to be happy, so I never fought with her about it. Though Eddie wasn't a very lovely guy, I was eager to welcome him. By not a nice guy, I mean he is not nasty to me in any sense. Simply said, he doesn't like me. He doesn't try to hide it. Though I'm not sure what kind of 42-year-old has problems with a 16-year-old guy, he most certainly does. Since I never offended him, I'm not sure why he hates me. Actually, I have always tried to be friendly to him since my family taught me to treat everyone kindly, even if they show you their dislike of you. He never remarks on me and never talks to me disrespectfully. He doesn't talk to me at all, hence the reason behind this is straightforward. For the past 3 years, he acts as though I don't exist in the household. I have no idea what I ever done to irritate him, but one day he simply decided he would not be talking to me and would be acting as though I wasn't there at all. The craziest thing on earth, and I'm not really used to this type of treatment. He seems to be treating me coldly for something, but I'm not sure what that is. Not knowing what his issue with me is, I can't even change my conduct. According to my mother, that is his natural state. He doesn't particularly like me, but he doesn't have any problems with me. But, especially when you're 42 and the other person is essentially just 16, I believe that if you dislike someone there should at least be a cause for it. It probably relates to the dynamics of my being the first kid of my mother or anything. I have no idea either. He has made it rather clear that he hates me at least generally. We used to get along reasonably earlier. He would communicate with me and ask all kinds of questions about my life when he arrived home first few times. I would reply to him quite politely. But he just decided he would not be talking to me following one visit. It was quite haphazard, and at the time I had no idea why he did that. Originally, I didn't ask questions since I assumed he might have simply forgotten to say hello or anything. But then it occurred so often that it became difficult to overlook. Given that my mother was behaving as though I hadn't been in the house, I even asked her whether I had done anything to irritate him. Every time I walked into the living room or any whatever room he was in, he would turn his face away. Regarding that, my mother gave me no particular precise advice. She just explained that he was attempting to process the reality that he would now have to deal with the presence of me. Perhaps he was merely not used to it, as he had only dated women without children prior to this. Given his own 2 children, I found it difficult to believe. His 2 sons were 12 and 15 years old respectively. After the younger brother was born, their mother died in an accident. I used to see my dad every other month, hence it was untrue that I would stay there all the time. Still, a few months went by and finally I came to terms with Eddie's reality, that he was not going to talk to me any longer. Eddie proposed to my mother after a year of dating, and few months later they were married. Eddie moved in the residence with his children following their marriage. I had only visited his children a few times before, and even then their father had instructed them not to talk to me. It was simply so insane. I have no idea how I handled that for years. As a matter of fact, Eddie and my mother used to live apart before marriage, since Eddie's mother stayed with him and was quite ill. He moved his mother in with his sister so she could look after her once they were married. Then Eddie brought his kids into our house. Though I'm not sure if any of you have actually gone through this, living in the same house with several people who won't interact with you and pretend you don't even exist is rather difficult. I had to put up with that, and based on their treatment of me, I felt like I was some sort of criminal, which made me terribly depressed. The worst aspect was that I never found out initially what I did wrong. I still have no idea. At least I'm not living with them anymore, hence it makes no difference. Years went by and their behavior remained the same, despite my adaptation to it. Eddie not talking to me whenever he came over to see my mother was already second nature to me, given his frequency. I grew used to him and his children living in the same house with me and not talking to me when they got married. Every time I visited my mother, I had to get ready psychologically to solely chat to her for the following few weeks. The only person who would talk to me in that house was her. Everybody else pretended I was invisible, absent. Although it hurt, I had to learn to deal with it, as I wanted to spend time with my mother. She was not going to discuss it with Eddie, I knew. Trust me, I tried to persuade her several times to approach him about it, find out more, or at least try to resolve this. She informed me she had already discussed it with him, but she could not reveal to me some personal reasons. He thus denied to recognize my existence. She knew where Eddie was coming from, hence she could not act about it in the house, as she also knew why I felt guilty about it. I would simply have to swallow it and deal with it though. She would get emotional and tell me I was being unappreciative if I tried to stand up for myself and dispute with her, as I was forgetting the fact she had made so many sacrifices for me. She thought I could surely deal with it for her benefit and pass Eddie for acting the way he did. Though I wanted to argue with her, I knew I would damage her emotions. I never even told my father about any of this, as I knew he would be rather irate and would most certainly confront my mother about it should he find out. Often they had tiny conflicts and arguments, since they were rather different people with rather different opinions on how to raise me. But I knew that something this big would most likely cause my father to seek extreme behavior or file for complete custody. I avoided telling him and acted as though everything was good with my mother and her new family, since I wanted to avoid starting conflict. Eddie and my mother had been living together for 2 years following 1 year of dating before they were married. I have so been tolerating this kind of behavior for 3 years now. I have been stretched quite thinly and pushed to my breaking point. Something lately truly drove me over the line, and I realized I could not continue to put up with this. I was meant to spend last month at my mother's place. Eddie and his children had been excluding me as usual. Having been arguing with some of my school classmates, I was already going through a difficult period and truly not in the appropriate frame of view at the time. Then, one morning 2 weeks ago, I woke up to discover the house was totally empty. Over that, I began to go crazy. Everything had been usual, or as normal as it gets at my mother's house, up until the evening before. Though they had all been ignoring me and chatting to one another, no mention of them traveling anyplace was made. But when I got up the following morning, the house was deserted. I asked about it right away, phoning my mother. Though I had no idea where they were, happily my mother answered the call. She told me she and the kids were heading out on a small trip for the week and requested me to stay in the house and take care of it when I asked her what they were doing. Right now I'm on summer break, hence I have no classes and not really have to travel anyplace. I do not, however, believe it appropriate to leave me at home alone and expect me to operate like a watchdog. I told my mother as much, that I was not ready to spend all day observing the house from home. I was not on board with that plan. If she desired something like that, she most likely ought to have just increased the protection surrounding her house rather than fooling me into remaining at home. Their leaving me at home all by myself and not even informing me about their intention to go on a road trip infuriated me most as well. Not even the politeness to let me know about it ahead of time allowed me to make an informed decision on whether or not to undertake it. As a male in high school, there is practically nothing more we want than an empty house all to ourselves. So, I most likely would have answered yes. I might have lived it for a few days after inviting a handful of my buddies over. But my mother was treating me like garbage, so I was so enraged that I didn't even feel like doing it. It made me quite sick. I wasn't really having anyone to invite at the time since I was also battling with my buddies. I was just living through a generally terrible period. I advised my mother to apologize to me for doing this. Eddie disliked talking to me, so I could understand that, but the very minimum they could do was let me know they were headed somewhere before they went. Not very pleasant to wake up one morning and discover you are by yourself. She advised me that I should get over it as I was exaggerating things. She simply hung up the call. She did not even wait for my response. She texted me instead of answering when I tried to contact her back, claiming to be trying to enjoy her trip and would chat to me once she arrived at the hotel. Everything infuriated me so much that I chose to walk away. Though I knew the house would be empty upon departure, I didn't give a damn. My calls went straight to voicemail when I attempted phoning my mother once more to let her know I was going. She did not respond. My mother typically leaves the house locked, so I locked it and left the keys under a potted plant. I then headed over to live with my dad. My father had anticipated me to be living with my mother until the end of the month, so he was genuinely startled to see me back so early once I got there. But I had enough, therefore I just returned to him. I ultimately told him everything that had been happening. I told him all about Eddie and his outrageous actions toward me, as well as how he had even instructed his children not to interact with me. It was getting on me since I felt as though I had done something wrong even though I had no idea what it was. Then, regardless of how much it hurt, I told him my mother simply wanted to let things go as it was and refused to even discuss this with Eddie. Eddie had personal motives, which she felt were legitimate, thus her justification was that. She wasn't even ready to tell me what those motives were though, so I could understand the events around me. I had tolerated this for long enough, only for the benefit of my mother. She constantly reminding me of the things she had given up in her life to make me happy. She cited this as grounds for why I need to put up with Eddie's actions. But I was not going to take it anymore as this was becoming really excessive. I turned around. My father needed to know what my mother was subjecting me to, hence I had to inform him. Though I had done nothing to offend anyone, I was just so sick and tired of being treated like this, thus maybe he could be able to act about the matter. I had always aimed to treat everyone kindly and compassionately. I then informed him about how my mother had left me at home alone without even letting me know Eddie, his children, or her were on travel plans. She simply wanted me to make sure everything was in order, look after the house, and live on my own for the following week. That hardly constituted my main concern. Her lack of understanding of the need of informing me about it ahead of time caused me much trouble. She hung up and turned away my calls when I tried to chat to her, as if I didn't count to her. She had definitely crossed the line, and I could not stand it anymore. I started crying after I completed telling my father all of this. I had not known exactly how much over the past few years all of this had been weighing on me. Before she met Eddie, my connection with my mother was normal. Then, everything changed and nothing was the same afterwards. It was quite tough for me to understand. I felt small to her. When I vented to my father, he just told me he was going to look after everything for me coming forward. He clearly was agitated, but he did not show me his irritation. Rather, he told me he was happy I had shared with him and that right now it was all on my chest. He reassured me that I would be living with him from then on. If I ever wanted to visit my mother, it would be my decision only, but he would not advise it. I have been living with my father since then. I never tried to call my mother following that day. The odd thing was she never tried to phone me either. She had left her son at home all alone, so the least she could have done was stay in touch with him as she traveled with her new family. What she had done had emotionally wounded me, but after talking to my father, I felt much lighter. I had resolved myself not to let this disturb me. We seldom spoke for 5 days or so. Then, when my mother called at last, I assumed it would be to check on me. She was screaming at me at the top of her lungs when I answered the call, though. The house had been stolen, hence it took me some seconds to understand she was yelling. Apparently, several of their possessions, including the TV and a few other pricey items, were now gone. She was attributing all of it to me for some reason. Given I had tried to let her know I was leaving and would be staying with my father, I'm not sure why. I told her I was offended with her treatment once she stopped screaming. I then reminded her that although I had tried to get in touch her numerous times after she hung up on me, she had continuously turning down my calls. I could have texted her instead, she informed me. Although that was a good point, I said I was upset and I didn't text her on intention. She shouldn't have expected me to stay in the first place since I thought it was quite clear that I was unhappy. We started a rather intense argument on it. She had been depending on me and thought I should have stayed at home no matter how furious or irritated I was since it was a safety issue. I informed her I never promised to shoulder such accountability. She ignored all of my calls even though I had tried my best to let her know I was leaving and didn't want to be home alone. She now had to deal with the results of her acts, not mine. That they, including Eddie, were trying to attribute this on me seemed absurd. Eddie visited me for the first time in years only to rage at me and accuse me of being reckless. He even mentioned some perplexing things, such as he had always known I would be the reason they fell apart. We hardly interact at all, hence I have no idea what that implies. How he arrived to that opinion without ever interacting with me is unknown. In any case, I agree with my dad as he believes this is my mom's fault and my parents are now bickering. My mother argues, nonetheless, that I am responsible. She is now demanding that my father cover the damages and contends that, should he be defending me, he should be ready to cover the expenses. Not sure what to do right now. She claims she will drop the issue provided I at least apologize to her and her family. Though I also don't want her to keep pestering my father, I do not want to do that. Am I terrible for leaving my mother's house empty to go live with my father after she and my stepdad left me home alone to travel with his family without even trying to tell me? Update 1. 2 weeks after the incident, a lot of things have come to light. First of all, at last I found the reason Eddie detested me so strongly. Eddie apparently asked my mother if he might bring his mother to live with them when they first began dating. Not comfortable with the thought of them moving in together so quickly, my mother had said no. She particularly objected to the notion of his sick mother living with him. Though Eddie had made it clear that his mother had a full-time nurse to look after her, she felt that having Eddie's mother live with us would be too much effort for her and declined. Eddie needs someone around to offer emotional support solely. Not ready to move in with Eddie, my mother wanted the extra burden of having her mother-in-law live with her gone. She blamed all on me rather than being direct with Eddie. About 3 months into their relationship, which was already somewhat serious, this happened. That was my mother's decision. I didn't want to say anything even though I felt it was too soon for them to be thinking of such things. She lied to Eddie, telling him she would be cool with him moving home with his mother and kids. She said, though, that I might be trouble. Telling Eddie that I had drove away her former boyfriends as I wanted to protect her and still thought my parents may be reunited, my mother presented me as a young criminal. She said she didn't want Eddie's mother to suffer because of me and she didn't want to break my heart. She also informed Eddie I had spoken negatively of his family. She said I had vowed to make his mother's life miserable should she move in and referred to her as a useless burden. She further claimed that I spoke of his children as little evil goblins, destined to destroy our family. These are things I would never say since, for me, they are callous and utterly out of line. But Eddie thought her. He then stopped interacting with me totally since he wanted nothing to do with me. Although I had always behaved properly around him, he trusted my mother's lies. He had no reason to mistrust such allegations. I learned about all of this some many days ago. Eddie had been pushing my mother to cut relations and disown me for what I had allegedly done. She had to come clean and reveal the truth at last when she objected. Eddie was astounded to find, based on things my mother had told him, he had been mistreating me for years. She had lied since she was too terrified to tell him she was the one not wanting his sick mother to live with us. Eddie and my mother live apart these days. Eddie was shocked he had treated me so badly over something untrue. Eddie even said in an email that if my mother had simply been honest with him, he would not have had a problem. Had she told him she lacked the bandwidth to tend to a sick relative, he would have devised a plan with his sister to alternate in looking after their mother. She instead decided to lie and invented a terrible tale about me. Eddie emailed me also apologizing for what he had put me through and hoping I could pardon him. I'm still digesting how I feel, thus I haven't answered yet. Right now, I want to keep my thoughts clean and avoid obsessing over this. Eddie had been mistreating me for so long since falsehoods my mother had told him caused him to change. She let it happen since it suited her. She even gave him tales about how I was running afoul of rules at the institution. He trusted her totally, hence he never even questioned it. We never communicated, thus he never knew that I was really a regular man, which prevented the exposure of my mother's lies. I have to admit, she is one twisted person. Knowing all of this, my father is now seeking full custody. Claiming she loved us and wanted us to be a happy family, my mother is depressed. But I'm sorry. Wrecking everyone else's life does not allow you to have a content family on your own terms. Update 2. Eddie is apparently seeking divorce in addition to my dad seeking complete custody. My mother wrote my dad a lot of texts pleading him to talk to Eddie and mend things since she can't live without all of us. I wonder how she even expects us to listen to her after all she did. Knowing full well that she had been lying about me to her husband, she made sure I was treated badly and didn't have any issues for so many years. I wish that nobody ever suffers something like this at the hands of their own mother. She merely cared about herself and nothing else, yet I continued wondering what I did wrong and why I was despised by her husband and his family for no reason. I have blocked her everywhere and desire never to interact with her ever once more. I loved her and wanted her to be happy, so over the past few years I put up so much. She obviously just gave her personal happiness first priority and felt different about her own son. That renders two of us who gave her happiness top priority. Well, not anymore. Update 3, Eddie has formally asked for divorce. Right now, that is absolutely all anyone in my family or among the mutual friends of my parents is talking about. My mother is handling this in a very unusual manner by sharing depressing remarks on social media, screenshots of which I constantly getting from my cousins. Though I'm not sure what she expects, that is most certainly not going to help. She dug her tomb. Now she had to lie in it. Update 4. My dad owns me entirely right now. After a few months, my mother fought valiantly, but the divorce and all the evidence of what she went through made things extremely difficult for her. She truly had no chance since we had all the evidence required, even though her attorney stretched the matter out for a few months. Nevertheless, since my dad is the custodial parent, I no longer have to see my mother if I so wish not to see her. She does have visitation rights, but I'm not sure why that would be relevant given I no longer wish to interact with her. Living with my father makes me pleased. Everything is going rather nicely. I'm excited to move on. I've even made plans with friends. My parents demanded I give my welcome party dress to my sister, who always destroys my things. Am I the asshole for finally telling the truth? I, 22F, severely need help about a matter involving my family, notably my sister Susan, 24F. I've been a long-time lurker, but recent circumstances have compelled me to finally share my tale. Please bear with me as this may be a bit long. I'm actually shivering as I type this, partially out of rage and partly out of dread of what will happen if they find out I'm asking for help. I recently graduated from college and got my dream job at a top technology business. Everything was going well. I worked hard in college, maintaining a 3.9 GPA with a partial scholarship, and securing this position after numerous rounds of competitive interviews. The organization is well known for its positive work environment and ample prospects for advancement. After years of walking on eggshells at home, I was truly pleased to begin my working life. The welcome reception for new staff is tomorrow evening. It's a formal function where new employees can meet top management and team leaders. Several VIPs will be there, and it is recognized to be an important networking event that can impact your future career path inside the organization. I worked part-time for months and saved up enough money to buy appropriate attire. It is not ostentatious, but rather professional and stylish. It cost me $400, which equates to numerous hours of tutoring and weekend shifts at a nearby cafe. My parents, both 45, didn't contribute anything, which was not surprising given their history of preferring my sister. My sister Susan has always been the golden child. She is currently unemployed after failing to complete college twice. She spends the majority of her time partying and posting on social media, while our parents cover her expenses without question. They've spent thousands on her shopping sprees, expensive devices, and even a car, which she crashed within 3 months. Meanwhile, since high school, I've had to work part-time jobs to cover basic expenses such as school supplies and clothing. The inequality in treatment began early. When I was 5, my aunt gave me a tiny art set for Christmas. Susan threw a violent rage, so my parents took it away and handed it to her, despite the fact that she had previously received other expensive gifts. They told me I needed to learn to share, that Susan was more sensitive. This set the tone for our entire life. Growing up, Susan would frequently throw temper tantrums if I received something pleasant. When I was 12, I won a science competition at school. Instead of celebrating, Susan had a meltdown because she wasn't getting enough attention. What is my parents' solution? They took away my prize and certificate to avoid causing Susan concern. Susan couldn't stand seeing me on stage, so they forced me to miss the award ceremony. This pattern persisted throughout my life. Any accomplishment or enjoyment of mine was viewed as a danger to Susan's well-being. As we became older, the situation worsened. Susan had a habit of removing my belongings without permission. Clothes, books, electronics, nothing was off limits. If I protested, my parents would chastise me for being selfish and insensitive to my sister's sentiments. They would remark things like, "Susan is sensitive and requires additional support. You're stronger, so you must compromise." When I acquired my first smartphone at 16, which I paid for my tutoring money, Susan demanded it because hers was outdated, despite the fact that it was only 6 months old. My folks made me swap phones with her. There were numerous occurrences like this. Susan would physically assault me if she didn't get her way. She once pushed me down the stairs when I refused to allow her to use my laptop for a social media broadcast. I sprained my ankle, but my parents did not take me to the hospital. Instead, they instructed me to remain in my room and not provoke Susan further. Another time, Mom slapped me in the face at a family gathering because I was getting more compliments on my academic achievements. My parents called me aside and chastised me for showing off and making Susan unhappy. The emotional assault was far more severe than the physical. Susan would frequently tell me that I was unwanted and that our parents had me solely to give her a sibling. She made fun of my appearance, circulated rumors about me at school, and even ruined my friendships. When I was 15, I had my first boyfriend. Susan claimed I was cheating on him. I wasn't, and even showed him modified screenshots of phony chats. He broke up with me, and when I confronted Susan, she simply laughed. Our parents? They say I should never have begun dating since it made Susan lonely. Throughout all of this, I learned to keep my head down and concentrate on my schoolwork. My dream of financial independence kept me going during the toughest moments. I stopped expecting support or validation from my family. I even intended to move out as soon as I started earning money, hoping to finally be free of this toxic environment. I immersed myself in schoolwork and extracurricular activities, doing everything I could to avoid being at home. During college, I believed things would improve because I was living in the dorms, but Susan would frequently drop up unexpectedly, demand money or clothes, and throw fits if I refused. My parents would call and chastise me for neglecting my sister, despite the fact that she was meant to be the older sibling. They even tried to force me to quit out after Susan failed her classes for the second time, stating that it was unfair for me to complete my education while she couldn't. But yesterday, everything came to a head. Susan and our parents stormed into my room 1 hour before I was supposed to try on my dress for final changes. She demanded that I dress for her next job interview. When I declined, she screamed about how I was arrogant for having a job before her, how I was purposefully attempting to make her appear bad, and how I'd always been a selfish, attention-seeking brat. Our parents, obviously, supported her. Your sister needs this more than you, Mom remarked, using the guilt-tripping tone I've come to despise. She has interviews scheduled, and this garment would greatly increase her confidence. You can wear something else to the celebration. Why are you always so difficult? I tried to explain how important this event was to my career, how I had saved for months to buy the outfit, and how this was my last chance to make a good first impression at my new job. But Dad cut me off, his face flushed with rage. Stop being so difficult, he snapped. You understand how difficult this time has been for Susan. Why do you always have to make it about yourself? Can't you think about your sister's emotions for once? What is the worst part? Susan had previously returned her own beautiful dress, purchased by our parents for $2,000, and used the money to buy makeup and a new iPhone cover. She didn't even have any actual interviews arranged. She only wanted my dress because it was mine. Later, I overheard her on the phone with a friend, joking about how she was going to take care of her sister's attitude issues. What distinguishes this situation from prior ones is that my grandmother, 71F, expects images from the welcome celebration. She's always been more sensible than my parents, but living in another state means she's not as familiar with our family dynamics. She explicitly requested that I send her images of my clothing, expressing her pride that I had landed such a good position right out of college. She even considered framing the photo for her homeroom. I am currently locked in my room, trying to figure out what to do. My hands are trembling while I type this. My sister is still having a fit outside, yelling that I am ruining her life and that she will make me regret being born. I can hear her hammering on my door and threatening to smash it down. My parents are texting me to stop being selfish and to think about family harmony. They're threatening to ground me, yes, at 22, and confiscate my phone if I don't cooperate. Should I just give in again to maintain the peace? I am aware that if I do not comply, they may physically compel me to hand over the dress, or Susan may trash it out of spite, as she has done with my belongings in the past. But I'm so tired of being the family's scapegoat. This welcoming celebration meant the world to me. It's my first step toward independence, a chance to begin establishing a life free of their destructive influence. I can't help but worry if telling my grandmother the truth about what's going on will make a difference. She's always been nice to me, but my parents have taught me that contacting relatives would bring shame to the family and that no one would believe me anyhow. They have spent years telling me that their treatment is normal and that I am to blame for not being more flexible. I am lost and unsure what to do. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Am I irrational in wanting to keep my own outfit, which I purchased with my own money? How do I approach this scenario without causing further controversy, but also without giving up something that is really important to me? I feel like I'm having a panic attack just thinking about approaching them. The welcoming celebration is tomorrow evening, so I have to make a decision fast. I've worked so hard to get here, and it's upsetting that my accomplishment is being overshadowed by my sister's demands and my parents' supporting conduct. The idea of showing up in something inappropriate and perhaps harming my professional reputation is worrisome. But so is the prospect of another violent encounter with Susan. Thank you for reading this far. I've never told anyone the whole amount of what goes on in our family, so writing it all down seems both terrifying and liberating. I keep second-guessing myself, wondering if I'm overreacting or if I'm insane for believing this isn't typical. Right now, any advice or assistance would be greatly appreciated. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who left positive comments on my first post. A lot has transpired in the past 24 hours, and everything has altered. Yesterday, after I posted, my grandmother called to inquire about the welcome celebration and pictures. When I started making excuses, she realized something was wrong. She insisted on bringing me up for lunch today, claiming to require assistance with grocery shopping. My parents couldn't turn her down without raising suspicions. At a quiet cafe away from home, my grandma held my hands and whispered, "Now, tell me everything." Her gentle tone smashed through all of my barricades. For the first time, I revealed the entire truth about our family dynamics. I told her how Susan ruined my school projects, shredded my college prep books, and bleached my prom outfit. I revealed years of secrets that I had kept buried out of fear and shame. My grandma listened without interrupting, but I could see her hands trembling in rage. When I concluded, she confessed that she and other relatives had suspected difficulties for years but had been unable to prove them because my parents always presented a perfect family picture at gatherings. Right there at the cafe, Mother began calling family members, including my aunts, uncles, and family acquaintances. As she made these calls, my phone started vibrating nonstop with texts from my family. My mother sent more anxious texts. "How can you tell lies about our family after everything we've done for you? You're making your sister cry again." Susan's communications began with a guilt trip. "I cannot believe you would do this to me. You know how sensitive I am." They swiftly moved to threats. "You better tell Grandma you lied, or I'll make you regret it. Remember your prom dress? This will be worse." Dad joined in. "Your mother is having a breakdown because of you. Come home right now and mend the mess you've made." But this time, their threats had a different effect on me. Each message proved what I had told my granny. While they were making these threats, my grandma showed me scores of encouraging texts from family members who were finally realizing the truth. The family has responded overwhelmingly. My aunt apologized for believing Susan's falsehoods about how cruel I was to her. My uncle promised to help me find an apartment close to my workplace. Another aunt recommended therapy and even offered to cover the fees. My grandmother made it clear that she will not allow them to scare me longer. She contacted her lawyer and purchased me a new outfit for the welcome celebration, which is now safely stored at my aunt's house. Even family friends have begun to share their observations of Susan's troubling behavior at gatherings, including a child psychologist who had observed warning flags years ago. I am writing this from my aunt's place. My parents are still sending me texts threatening to cut me off financially, which is immaterial because I support myself, and telling everyone what a bad daughter I am. Susan's latest threat was to ruin my job, but it no longer scares me. For the first time, I am not facing their assault alone. Tomorrow, I'll go to the welcome reception in my new dress, with my aunt driving me there for safety. My grandma instructed me to chronicle everything from now on, including Susan's threats. Thank you, Reddit, for letting me see that what I've normalized isn't typical at all. I'll post another update when I can. Update 2. I never anticipated things to escalate so soon following my last update. I'm writing this from my grandmother's house, with a broken nose and confused feelings about what's transpired. The day following my welcome celebration, my grandmother surprised me with a new MacBook for work. She had it transported to my aunt's place first, knowing Susan's track record with my belongings. When I returned home to pack some clothing, I assumed my parents and Susan would be gone. I was mistaken. Susan waited in my room. She'd learned about the laptop via social media, where my cousin had posted a congratulations message about my new job and mentioned the gift. What occurred next still seems strange. "So you're taking bribes from Grandma now?" Susan sat on my bed, browsing through her phone, her voice strangely quiet. "Do you think you can turn the entire family against us?" I tried to hastily get some clothing and leave, but she was blocking the door. "Do you remember when we were kids and Mom always said that sharing is caring?" She smiled, but her eyes remained icy. Grandma also needs to learn that lesson. Hand over the laptop. When I declined, stating that I needed it for my new job, she pulled my hair and banged my face against the doorframe. I heard a crack and felt warm blood rush out of my nose. The agony was excruciating, but what hurt worse was hearing my parents' reaction. When they heard the ruckus, they came upstairs, but instead of assisting me, Mom began yelling at me for provoking Susan. Dad simply stood there, saying I should have known better than to flaunt my new gift in front of my sister. Fortunately, my aunt insisted on waiting outside in her car. When she heard the shouting, she entered and discovered me bleeding. What followed was like a scene from a movie. My aunt phoned both the police and my grandmother. Within an hour, my grandma came, along with 2 additional aunts and an uncle. The cops gathered accounts and photos of my injuries. Susan kept changing her tale, first saying it was an accident, then that I had assaulted her first, and ultimately breaking down and yelling that I deserved it for stealing her family. The most shocking development was not the police involvement, but the community response. While I was in the hospital getting my nose treated, word went throughout our extended family and social networks. My parents' carefully cultivated picture of the ideal family broke totally. Their country club membership was quietly cancelled. Mom's club barred her from their weekly sessions. Dad's golf mates were suddenly too busy to play. Susan's few remaining acquaintances began relaying anecdotes about her violent outbursts that they had witnessed over time. My parents suffered greatly from social isolation. They'd spent years promoting their image as ideal parents with 2 daughters, the sensitive artist Susan and the difficult one, me. Everyone now knows the truth, and they are unable to handle it. They've been calling relatives non-stop in an effort to minimize the harm. Their latest claim is that I'm having a mental breakdown and fabricating stories about Susan. But nobody believes it anymore, especially after the police report. Susan's attitude to the social ramifications has been especially worrying. She set up several social media identities to harass me and disseminate misinformation about our family situation. She even came up to my office, attempting to convince my new coworkers that I am unstable. Fortunately, my manager was aware of the issue through my uncle, who works in human resources, and had security take her away. My grandmother's lawyer assisted me in filing for a restraining order against Susan. The proof was overwhelming: years of documented events, witness accounts from family and friends, and now police photos of my injuries. I'm currently residing at my grandmother's house, and the difference with my previous existence is startling. Nobody here advises me to stop provoking my sister. Nobody insists that I give up my possessions in order to keep the peace. I can leave my laptop on my desk without worry of it disappearing. My extended family's support continues to astound me. Cousins I haven't spoken with in years have reached out to share their impressions about Susan's behavior at family gatherings. My aunt's acquaintance, a therapist, helped me comprehend that what I was going through was continuous abuse enabled by my parents. Meanwhile, my parents' social circle is diminishing. Their neighbors no longer stop and speak. Mom's social media posts about praying for her troubled daughters are received with silence or harsh criticism. Dad's business associates have begun to distance themselves, concerned about his judgment after learning how he handled the family problem. Susan's work prospects, which were previously poor, have become virtually non-existent. In our society, word spreads quickly, and her violent outburst is now widely known. She blames me for wrecking her life, but more people recognize her threats for what they are. I am still absorbing all that has transpired. My nose will heal, but witnessing my parents' carefully constructed facade disintegrate has been both satisfying and heartbreaking. They are dealing with the natural consequences of their decisions, and no amount of trickery will help them this time. I'll provide another update as I have more information to offer. Thank you everybody for your encouragement. It helped me hold firm when Susan requested the laptop, even though the repercussions were unpleasant. Sometimes things have to get worse before they can improve. Update number 3. Thank you for your support on my prior updates. It's been a hectic few days, and I wanted to highlight some important developments. My healing is progressing well. The swelling in my nose has subsided, but the bruise appears worse. The doctor thinks there will be no permanent harm, which is reassuring given my future work presentations. Living at my grandmother's house has become permanent, and the contrast with my previous existence is stark. This morning, I unintentionally spilled a coffee mug and found myself flinching, expecting screams and punishment. Instead, I received my grandmother's polite concern and assistance cleaning up. The community's response has been incredible. Mom's social media presence collapsed when a prayer request post about her troubled daughters backfired. Susan's previous students swarmed the comments section with their own accounts of her bullying and violence. Dad's business has suffered a big blow. Several long-term clients have gone, and his partners convened an emergency meeting to evaluate his situation after discovering his participation in facilitating Susan's actions. They are especially concerned about his judgment in leadership roles. Susan has been on a downward spiral since the restraining order. She set up other phony profiles to harass me and my supporters, but unintentionally posted from her main account, providing additional proof for the court case. My aunt made a stunning revelation. My parents had frequently refused to allow Susan to get psychological care when she was younger. They were more concerned with preserving their ideal family image than with resolving the real challenges. My parents' attempts to regain control backfired spectacularly. Their family meal to clear the air was only attended by 2 distant relatives. Mom's best friend publicly unfriended her after viewing the police report images. Dad was asked to step down from church leadership, and Mom's gardening group decided to continue without her. The most affirming moment occurred when my high school counselor contacted me, apologizing for not doing more when she recognized indicators of abuse years ago. My parents had persuaded her that my reclusive conduct was teenage rebellion, and Susan's violence was artistic temperament. My workplace has been quite supportive following Susan's attempt to make trouble. My manager added additional security precautions, and my coworkers have been understanding of my predicament. My uncle published a public post yesterday, documenting years of disturbing behavior he had witnessed. His post went viral in our neighborhood, resulting in additional social ramifications. My parents' reputation in the area has shattered. Mom was ousted from the Homeowners Association board, and they can't go shopping without being followed by murmurs and glances. Susan's victim narrative is failing. She had a meltdown at our aunt's church when someone mentioned my name, confirming what everyone had heard about her conduct. I'm still adjusting to living without constant fear. My grandma enrolled me in therapy, which has helped me appreciate how unusual my home life was. Our lawyer's response to my parents' latest cease and desist letter regarding spreading falsehoods included police report images and witness statements. The help from this community has been tremendous. You made me realize that I wasn't insane for believing my situation was unusual. I'll publish a final update after everything has settled down, but for now, I'm focusing on recuperating and starting a new life. It's incredible how much energy you have when you're not always walking on eggshells. Update number 4. It has been 6 months since my previous update, and I believe it is finally time to conclude this chapter of my life. Thank you to everyone who has followed my journey and provided support. I'm presently prospering in my profession, having recently received my first promotion for leading a successful project. My team leader applauded my attention to detail and calm attitude to crisis management, skills I honed while navigating my family's chaos for years. My personal life has changed completely. I've moved into my own place, but I still see my grandmother on a daily basis. The first night in my new place, I realized I could put my possessions anywhere without fear of being stolen or destroyed. Simple things, such as having my own space and making decisions without concern, feel like valuable gifts. Susan was recently diagnosed with a number of mental health issues after being compelled to undergo evaluation as part of an anger management program. She is currently in a specialist treatment facility, not by choice, but as a condition of her probation following another violent event that did not involve me. My parents have faced serious penalties. Dad's firm encouraged him to retire early after big clients expressed worries about his judgment. Mom has become a social outcast in their neighborhood. Their attempts to join a new religious congregation were thwarted when members of their previous church revealed their background. They're selling their home and moving to another state for a fresh start, but their reputation precedes them in various areas they've investigated. The continual chilly shoulders and whispered remarks became too much for them. The most unexpected development has been the ripple effect among our extended family. My tale inspired 2 cousins to speak out about their own experiences with family abuse. It's as if breaking the veil of silence has enabled others to finally recognize their own hardships. Work has become my haven. I just created a support system for new employees, and my manager applauded my unique perspective on building friendly settings. The irony is not lost on me that my previous difficulties have become a source of professional strength. My parents made one more attempt at reconciliation last month, sending a beautifully worded letter through their new lawyer recommending family therapy. My grandmother's lawyer simply said, "All communication must go through legal channels, and I am not interested in reconciliation." The greatest rewarding shift has been in my interactions with my extended relatives. Sunday dinners at my grandmother's place have become a ritual, full of real laughter and joy. My aunts and uncles tell me things from my childhood that my parents twisted or kept buried, allowing me to regain some of my heritage. I've begun mentoring at a local youth center, working with teenagers from challenging home backgrounds. One girl just informed me that my tale inspired her to come up about her own sister's abuse. My grandma has been my biggest supporter, demonstrating what genuine family love looks like, unconditional but with appropriate boundaries. Susan's restraining order is now permanent, and she is legally prohibited from approaching my employment or apartment. The community's response has served as a lesson in social fairness. My parents and Susan faced no legal consequences other than the restraining order, but the social isolation and loss of status were more effective than any court sentence. I'm finally creating the life I've always wanted but never thought possible. I have a successful career, a supportive social circle, and, most importantly, peace of mind. I no longer react to sudden noises or apologize for my existence. This will be my last update. To anyone in a similar situation, it is never too late to speak up and reclaim their life. Sometimes the most difficult step is believing you deserve better. My wife forgot our anniversary, so I didn't pick her up at the airport. Am I the asshole for not forgiving her despite her later apology? My wife forgot our anniversary, so I decided not to pick her up at the airport. I am a 23-year-old male married to Sarah, 25. We've been together for 5 years, and I'm reaching a breaking point. Let me set the stage. It's our 5th wedding anniversary. You'd think that after 5 years of marriage, some recognition of the milestone would be expected, right? I had been dropping hints for weeks, saying things like, "I can't believe we've been married for 5 years," or, "Do you think we'll do anything special for our anniversary this year?" She responded distractedly, as I expected given her hectic schedule. Then the day arrived, and everything went as usual. She didn't say anything. There were no flowers, no meal, and no mention of our anniversary. I mean, I had gone all out every year before, organizing surprise dinners, writing meaningful messages, and sending thoughtful gifts. But over the past few years, it seemed like I was the only one making an attempt. So I brought it up. I said something like, "Hey, I suppose we aren't celebrating today?" She just laughed it off, saying, "Oh, we'll do something later. Don't worry." But later never arrived. The day went without her realizing it. I felt hurt and irritated. I've put so much into this marriage, and now here I am, feeling forgotten on our anniversary. Then things began to spiral. She had a business trip arranged for the same week, departing on the 14th and returning the following evening. She asked me to bring her up from the airport, as usual. At first, I hesitated. I had been giving passive-aggressive indications about my feelings, but she didn't appear to notice. Instead, she kept making jokes about how weary she was from the trip and how excited she was to be home, without mentioning the anniversary. It was all about work, and everything seemed okay. Frustration built up. I had been doing all the emotional work, making every special occasion memorable, while she was constantly distracted or preoccupied. That night, after lying awake for several hours, I made a decision. I was not going to pick her up at the airport. I wasn't about to reward her contempt for me. Maybe if I stopped being so accommodating, she'd realize how much she took me for granted. I did not text her, call her, or do anything. When she gave me the normal message with her flight information, time, gate, and ETA, I didn't answer. I did not even acknowledge it. It felt empowering to simply not care, even if only for a moment. I spent the day doing my own thing, treating myself as I deserved, with no regard for Sarah's flight or her return. Around 8 p.m., I began receiving texts from her, one after the other. She started phoning over and over. I simply ignored it. A part of me felt bad, but the majority of me felt strangely satisfied. Sarah was stranded at the airport with no one to pick her up, and I wasn't going to be the dutiful husband anymore. She could figure things out. Finally, about an hour later, after ignoring her calls for what seemed like an eternity, I texted her. "Oh, sorry. I completely forgot you needed a ride. This happens from time to time. I confess it was a touch petty, and I'm not proud of it. But, after 5 years of always putting her needs first, I finally broke." The remarks were almost too sweet, full of irony. I knew it would enrage her, and that's exactly what occurred. The next text I received was a series of heated rants, calling me selfish and reckless. She went on about how I was overreacting and being childish. I didn't care. The following several hours were a haze. She eventually found her way home, and as she came through the door, there was a chill in the air. She scarcely acknowledged me. She was still angry and sulking, and I didn't care anymore. I went to bed early that night and left her to her thoughts. The following day was no better. Sarah did not even apologize. She made the same old excuse about work being stressful, claiming she had just lost track of things. But I wouldn't have it. I wasn't going to let her brush everything under the rug anymore. I wanted her to admit she had messed up. I wanted her to understand what she'd done. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the sense that nothing would change. So I let her be angry. And me? I felt an odd combination of remorse and delight. I have no idea where this will lead, but I know I can't go back to the way things were. Something has to give. Update number 1. After I texted Sarah about forgetting to take her up, I didn't hear from her for a while. But, oh, when I did, it was not pretty. She started texting and calling repeatedly. I ignored each one. Part of me wanted to just let her stew, but I kept my phone on silent, and hours passed. I wasn't going to rush to pick up the pieces because she was the one who had ignored me for so long. It wasn't until after 10 p.m., I eventually surrendered and checked my phone. I had missed perhaps 15 calls and at least 20 texts. Most of them consisted of her calling me petty, reckless, and juvenile. She was infuriated. The most memorable text was one that read, "You really had to leave me stranded? Is this how you treat me after all I've done for you?" I wasn't going to fall into that guilt trip. Instead, I said quietly, "Maybe now you know what it feels like to be forgotten." I didn't say anything else. I knew any additional explanation would be lost on her. Sarah attempted to defend herself as best she could. Her response was classic. "I apologize, okay? But I've been occupied with work. I did not mean to forget the anniversary. You know how hectic things have been recently." It was the usual excuse she had always used. Job stress. But this time, it wasn't going to work. I did not respond right away. I just let the silence linger between us. After a while, she got the hint. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized how deeply she'd been affected by the entire affair. Sarah waited at the airport for more than 3 hours. Apparently, she tried to phone me every half hour throughout that time. She couldn't catch a cab soon away because she didn't want to spend money on it. She eventually gave up and hired a cab, but by the time she arrived home, it was already past midnight. When she came through the door, I didn't welcome her or make small conversation. She did not even look at me. She simply went past me, dropping her suitcase on the floor. It was obvious that she was still irritated. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. She tried to talk, but it was more of a monologue about how unfair I was. "I worked hard, and this is how you treated me?" she inquired, her voice filled with frustration. But the excuses were no longer effective for me. I wasn't interested in hearing about how difficult her job was when I felt like I'd been carrying this relationship alone for months. The first night back was horrible. We did not converse much. The only time she looked at me was while I was preparing for bed. I could feel her stare at me, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I was not going to make the first move. The next day, Sarah tried to make things right by texting me and stating, "I've been working so hard lately, it simply slipped my mind." You know how it goes. Same old narrative, same lame excuse. At this point, it was clear she didn't get it. We scarcely communicated for the following 2 days. Every time we did it, she seemed to be walking on eggshells. She was passive-aggressive, and I was not about to back down either. I had made my point, and I was not going to let her convince me that everything was all right just because she offered a few meaningless apologies. It didn't help that her father became involved. He called to ask why Sarah had to take a cab home. He was concerned, of course, but it seemed like he was trying to guilt-trip me. "I can't believe you left her there," he said. "She's been working so hard, and you just let her figure it out on her own." I had no idea how to answer, so I didn't. I let the call finish and walked away. Later that evening, Sarah made an effort to apologize, but it was not real. It felt forced, as if she was saying sorry simply to relieve the tension. "I guess I could have done better, but you didn't have to leave me stranded," she replied. There was no true accountability, no understanding of why I was furious in the first place, only another deflection. I wasn't going to accept a half-hearted apology. I told her, "I'll get past this if you can acknowledge how I feel and start being more considerate. It's not only about the anniversary. It's about how you treat me overall." How did she respond? She accused me of overreacting. She claimed I was overreacting to the situation, but I refused to back down. After a few more days of stillness and tension, I decided to establish some boundaries. I wanted space to focus on myself, so I resumed my own activities. It was a comfort not to have to continuously attend to her moods. Sarah wasn't delighted with this, but she made one more effort to make things right. She made a dinner reservation for the two of us, stating it was to compensate for something. I wasn't sure if she truly believed it would heal things or if it was a last-ditch effort to escape true responsibilities. Regardless, I wasn't sure if it was enough. I was still waiting to see if she was truly going to change. Is this a serious attempt, or just another temporary fix that will come apart in a few weeks? Update number 2. Following the airport incident, Sarah determined to attempt to set things right. She made a dinner reservation at a restaurant, claiming it was to make amends for everything that had occurred. I won't lie, part of me was cautiously optimistic. Maybe this was the moment she realized how much she had hurt me and decided to make an effort. But, as usual, this was not the case. Sarah texted me at midday on the day of the dinner to inform me that the reservation had been made for 7 p.m. I didn't sense any enthusiasm, I was simply going through the motions. Perhaps it was the fact that this wasn't our first attempt to settle things, or it was the nagging feeling in my gut that this supper would make no difference. Still, I got ready and decided to give it a shot. At least for one night, everything might be different. We got at the restaurant, and to my surprise, it wasn't as nice and private as I had imagined. Instead, it was a basic chain restaurant, the kind you go to for casual evenings when you don't want to put in too much effort. It wasn't even a place I enjoyed. I'd previously stated that I didn't like such types of places, but Sarah had chosen them regardless. I tried not to let it affect me, but it was difficult to ignore the lack of effort. It felt like she had chosen the easiest option, as if she couldn't be bothered to think about what I would want. The conversation began awkwardly. Sarah immediately began discussing how hard her job had been, going on and on about deadlines, meetings, and the amount of strain she was under. She didn't even recognize that she had missed our anniversary or left me stranded in the airport. Instead, she simply kept chatting about work. She said something about doing her best and being stressed out, but I couldn't help but think she was entirely missing the point. She had not apologized for the anniversary. She had not apologized for making me feel totally invisible. The more she discussed work, the more frustrated I felt. It wasn't simply that she was disregarding the larger issue, she didn't appear to comprehend how deeply her actions had hurt me. And it struck me harder than ever. In that moment, I recognized that this was not an isolated incident. This was a pattern. We were sitting there trying to have a great supper, but all I could think about was how disconnected she was from what was truly important. She didn't seem to get why I was wounded. It wasn't only about the anniversary. It was not only about the airport. It was about all the tiny things she had overlooked over the years, like the birthday surprises I arranged alone. She was too busy during the holidays, so we spent them apart. Our small conversation didn't last long, and things began to unravel. We had a minor quarrel about the food, but as often, it escalated into something more. She became defensive, arguing that I was being very picky and ungrateful. I attempted to clarify that it was not about the meal or the restaurant, but about everything else. That's when everything started to spill out. I told her how I felt ignored, and how she never seemed to put any effort into our relationship. I mentioned the anniversaries, birthdays, and quiet nights where I felt like a supporting figure in her life. Sarah, however, deflected rather than accepting responsibility. She began talking about how nobody's perfect, and how I should simply accept what I had. And there it was, the excuse I'd grown tired of hearing. Nobody's perfect. It was the mantra she usually said when things got tough, and this time was no exception. When the waiter came by to see if we needed anything else, I simply stared at Sarah. Her countenance was blank, and it was evident she was no longer listening. She made a token effort, offering me a small box of chocolates with a half-hearted smile. "Here," she answered. "This is for you. Sorry for everything, it was a lovely gesture, I suppose, but it felt insincere, a last-ditch effort to make things right without actually addressing the larger issues between us." I did not even want the chocolates. I was past the point of making little gestures. I needed something authentic. The remainder of the dinner was quiet, unpleasant, and full of meaningless platitudes. We scarcely chatted on the way home. I felt the strain in the car. Sarah was still unhappy, but I couldn't tell if she was upset with me for calling her out or with herself for not understanding why I was upset in the first place. It did not matter. Regardless, the silence was deafening. When we returned home, I couldn't shake the impression that nothing had changed. I thought that this time she'd understand. That it wasn't about the little things, but about the broader picture. But my hopes were dashed when I looked at her and realized she still didn't see it. Sarah began completing minor household chores over the next 3 days. She washed the dishes, helped with the laundry, and cleaned up. At first, I assumed this was a sign that she was attempting to change. However, it felt more like damage control than anything else. She wasn't doing these things because she truly wanted to, she was doing them because she knew I was furious and wanted to avoid a confrontation. I noticed myself emotionally distancing more and more. I couldn't help it. I did not want to keep being disappointed. I didn't want to keep waiting for her to change when it appeared she wasn't trying. I didn't want to fix someone who refused to meet me halfway. A friend of mine advised I provide Sarah an ultimatum. "Either she changes, or you walk away," he replied. "It seems harsh, but But perhaps it was the wake-up call she needed. I couldn't keep on like this, always wondering if she was going to make a genuine effort. Sarah's excuses piled up over time: work stress, deadlines. They were always her explanations for everything. I was beginning to notice a larger problem. Sarah didn't seem to realize the developing emotional distance between us. She assumed that performing the bare minimum would suffice, but I realized that wasn't the case anymore. I began to ponder about our future together. Was this relationship salvageable? I had no idea anymore. Update 3. After weeks of dealing with the same cycle, empty apologies, half-hearted attempts at change, and more excuses, I had reached my breaking point. I could not go on like this any longer. I had tried to be patient and give her opportunities to step up, but it was evident that Sarah didn't grasp it. So I decided to sit down with her and have the chat we should have had months ago. It was not easy. I'd been putting it off, hoping she'd figure it out on her own, but that wasn't happening. When she returned home from work one evening, I informed her that we needed to discuss. There was no way around this one. We sat in the living room, and I could immediately feel the tension rising. I didn't want to yell, but I couldn't hide my feelings any longer. I began by telling Sarah, "I can't do this anymore. This relationship has been one-sided for far too long. You've disregarded me, forgotten critical events, and never accepted responsibility for any of it." She only glanced at me, bewildered. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "I've been working so hard, and you're acting like I'm doing nothing." I took a deep breath and tried to remain cool. "It is not about your work, Sarah. It's about how you treated me. The anniversary. The airport incident. I've tried to make this relationship work for both of us, but you haven't even attempted to meet me halfway." Sarah instantly went on the defensive, as she usually does. "You're blowing things out of proportion," she continued, her voice rising. "You're acting like I forgot your anniversary on purpose. I didn't mean to forget, okay? I've been stressed out with work." Sarah responded with defiance. I was not buying it. "It isn't only the anniversary, Sarah. It is everything. It's every time you make me feel unimportant. Every birthday and holiday passes, and I'm the only one who makes an attempt." Sarah's face stiffened. "I am not perfect, okay? Nobody is perfect. Maybe you're just too demanding. I do what I can." She placed the responsibility back on me. "Perhaps you expect too much of me." Her statement made me even enraged. "I am not looking for perfection, Sarah. I am asking for basic consideration. I am seeking for respect. I'm asking you to care about our relationship in the same way that I do. But you don't, and that's what really hurts." The room fell silent for a minute. I could see Sarah wasn't expecting this type of discourse. She squirmed uneasily in her seat, obviously unsure how to answer. "I guess I could have done better," she said, but it was clear she didn't truly believe it. She didn't really accept responsibility for anything. She wasn't even apologetic. She was simply stating what she needed to say. "I'm not interested in hearing you say you could have done better," I stated calmly. "I need more than that. I need to know you understand it. I need to know you understand how much your negligence has harmed me, and I need you to demonstrate that you are prepared to make an attempt." Sarah avoided staring at me. I could tell she was uncomfortable, but I was not done. I had one final point to make. "How would you feel if the roles were reversed, Sarah? How would you feel if I forgot about our anniversary and left you at the airport?" For the first time in the conversation, she was silent. Her mouth opened, but no words emerged. I could see the wheels moving in her thoughts, and for a brief time, it appeared that the truth had finally been accepted. She didn't say anything for quite some time, and I let the stillness hang in the air. Finally, Sarah broke the pause with a low, "I'm not sure. I suppose I'd be pissed." I nodded. "Exactly. That is how I feel. That is how I have felt for a long time." I proposed something simple. Couples activities such as frequent date nights or simply spending time together to restore the connection we once had. I wanted to see if she was truly willing to put up the effort to alter things. "We can try it, but it will require work from both of us. I can't keep carrying this relationship by myself," I admitted. Sarah stared at me and hesitated for a second. "Okay, I'll try," she answered, but her tone was flat, as if she was simply repeating what she thought I wanted to hear. "I'm not sure whether date nights will solve anything, but I'll try." That was the lackluster response I expected. It felt more like a responsibility than a commitment. I knew I had to wait a few weeks to see whether anything would change. I couldn't simply accept her word for it. The conversation concluded on a tense note. Sarah did not appear convinced, and neither did I. We went to bed without saying anything more, both of us lost in our own thoughts. I kept wondering if Sarah's statements were sincere or if she was just saying anything to get me off her back. I chose to give it time, but I knew I couldn't wait forever. I had already invested so much in this relationship, and I wasn't sure how much more I could offer if nothing changed. I couldn't let myself become trapped in a cycle of disappointment and broken promises. So now I'm simply waiting to see if Sarah will make an attempt or if she'll revert to her old habits. I'm not sure what will happen, but I do know one thing: I'm not going to stick around for another false promise. Update 4. After that serious chat, things appeared to take a turn. For a time, Sarah tried harder. She actually organized a small date night for us, which included dinner at a local restaurant we both enjoyed. Nothing extravagant, but it did feel like an effort. She also began to assist around the house more, cleaning dishes without being asked, bringing out the garbage, and picking up groceries. Things appeared to be improving for about a week. I even began to wonder whether she was finally getting it. Maybe I was wrong about her. But during the second week, things began to return to normal. Sarah canceled a planned outing, claiming that work had piled up and she couldn't get away. Again, work stress was her go-to excuse. I tried to be understanding, but it was difficult not to perceive it as yet another meaningless excuse. I was frustrated. I had hoped that her efforts in the first week were meaningful, but they suddenly felt like a temporary fix. Something she did only to keep me quiet. The saddest thing was when Sarah forgot another milestone. She didn't recall the day we first met. It wasn't something big, just a minor detail that mattered to me. I mentioned it lightly, but she just shrugged it off as if it were no great deal. In that instant, I knew she was no longer trying to keep track of these things. She didn't care about the small things that used to matter to both of us. It was only me, attempting to hang on to whatever spark we had left, while she appeared to be losing interest. I began doubting everything. Did Sarah genuinely care about our marriage, or did she simply assume that I would always be there? She didn't appear to realize how much effort I was putting in, which hurt more than I'd want to admit. I wasn't sure if she still respected me or just took me for granted. One day, while cleaning up the living room, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. I found Sarah's calendar stashed beneath some papers on her desk. I don't typically rummage through her belongings, but something told me to look. I noticed the date of our anniversary marked on the calendar. But here's the thing, she still forgot it. It was as if she had prepared for it, made a note of it, but then forgot about it when it finally arrived. I was quite frustrated. Later that night, I confronted her, wondering why she had marked our anniversary yet still forgot about it. She made some poor excuse about forgetting to check her calendar that week. That is what she said, as if it were an innocent mistake. It was not a mistake. It was plain negligence. When I looked at the calendar more thoroughly, I realized what had actually been prioritized. There were work obligations, sporting events, and weekend vacations with pals, but almost nothing about us. Our relationship seemed to have slipped under her notice. I had understood that work was always her top priority, but seeing it set out like that stung me harder than intended. I had tried so hard to keep things going between us, but it seemed like she couldn't be bothered. The final straw arrived a few days later. I overheard Sarah on the phone with a friend, discussing a weekend trip they were arranging for a sporting event. She was ecstatic about it, discussing the trip's specifics as if it were the greatest thing ever. I felt terrible to my stomach. This was something she had not revealed to me. She had time for a weekend excursion with her pals, but she couldn't remember even the smallest details about me. I tried to dismiss it at first, but the more I considered it, the more betrayed I felt. It wasn't simply that she prioritized her hobbies, she never thought about how I'd feel. She had plenty of time and energy for everything else, but when it came to us, I felt like an afterthought. So I stopped engaging. I stopped making an attempt. I stopped texting her throughout the day and trying to make small chat when she arrived home. I felt if she didn't notice the distance between us, she probably never would. I needed her to see what was going on. I needed her to feel how I was feeling. Eventually, our pals noticed. They were initially all on Sarah's side, claiming that I was overreacting. But eventually, they noticed it as well. Several friends contacted me, stating they understood my unhappiness and even confessed Sarah had been selfish. They told me I deserved better, and I understood I wasn't alone in seeing the reality. But nothing changed. The final blow came when Sarah canceled our scheduled dinner date to attend a last-minute gathering with her pals. She didn't even tell me in person. She sent me an apology, stating she couldn't refuse the invitation. That was it. That was when I understood I needed to make a decision. This was something I couldn't keep putting off. Sarah wouldn't change unless I forced her to. I could wait for her to figure it out, but at what cost? The longer I stayed, the more I felt like I had lost myself. I needed to stop waiting for a relationship that was unsatisfactory. Now I'm at a crossroads. I'm not sure if I have the strength to walk away, but I can't keep continuing like this. The emotional barrier has grown so far that I'm not sure how to bridge it anymore. Something needs to give. It's time for me to make a difficult decision about my marriage, one that will either force her to wake up or allow me the space I require to move on. Update 5. After everything that had happened, I felt it was time to take a step back and consider what I really wanted. I needed to decide if I wanted to keep trying in this relationship or if it was time to walk away for forever. So I chose to spend the entire weekend alone. I did not respond to Sarah's SMS or calls. I didn't even leave the house often. I needed room to think, and this time I wasn't going to allow my emotions influence my decision. During that weekend, I finally realized the reality. I had been settling for less than I deserved for quite some time. I recognized how emotionally spent I had gotten by clinging to something that no longer existed. The small things I did for Sarah, the gestures, the effort, all seemed to go unappreciated. She wasn't making an effort to make me feel respected. She was not even trying. And the worst part? Sarah didn't seem to notice anything wrong. She simply went about her normal routine, figuring everything was great. That understanding ached. I spent the entire weekend reflecting on how much I gave to this relationship and how little I received in return. I was no longer upset about the anniversary or the airport event. I was concerned about the big picture. Sarah had never really cared about putting me first. She had never seen me as a priority. When I came out of my weekend of reflection, I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I was emotionally weary, and if I stayed in this relationship, I would only continue to be harmed. So I arranged one last conversation with Sarah. This was it. I was going to lay it all out and set clear boundaries for what I needed if this relationship was going to survive. I decided to wait until the following weekend to have the chat. Sarah was going to be home, and I knew it was our last chance to actually talk. I was prepared to be direct. To tell her everything I had been keeping hidden for so long. When the time arrived, I sat with Sarah in the living room. She could see something was wrong, but I don't think she expected what happened. I began by telling her that I couldn't continue in a relationship in which I felt underappreciated. I've tried to connect with you, I explained, but nothing has changed. You're always too busy, and I'm constantly making excuses for you. I can't do it anymore. Sarah appeared shocked. She couldn't believe what I was saying. She continued asking, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? I didn't realize things were so horrible." It was as if she was taken aback by anything I said, but I found it difficult to feel sorry for her. How could she not have realized it? How could she not notice the impact her negligence was having on me? She instantly transferred the blame back onto me, saying, "You should have told me how you felt. I didn't realize things were this horrible. I thought everything was fine," she explained. She made it appear as if it was my fault for not being more outspoken about how miserable I was. That's when I realized she was completely out of touch with the state of our relationship. "I've tried, Sarah," I answered, trying to remain cool. "I've tried to connect with you multiple times, but you never listen. You do not take my problems seriously, and I have been left feeling alone. I can't continue doing this." Sarah did not take it well. She asked me for another opportunity. "I will change, I swear. I will put forth more effort. I will prioritize you. Please don't leave me." Her voice was imploring now, and her eyes were filled with desperation. For a brief moment, I considered backing down, but I knew I couldn't just let her keep making bogus promises. She had been doing so for years. "I'm willing to give it one last try," I told you. "But this time, things have to be different. I need you to actually show me that you can change. No more excuses. No more empty apologies." Sarah agreed, but I was not convinced. Her words were only that, words. Actions spoke louder, and I wanted to see if she would follow through on anything she said. We discussed specific things she could do to make time for us, organize more thoughtful dates, and be present while we were together. It was a modest list, but it was the beginning. The following few days saw a variety of tiny but obvious changes. Sarah began planning dates again. They weren't lavish, but they were thoughtful, and she was obviously trying. She began to be more present at home, taking the time to talk to me rather than disappearing into her phone or watching TV. It felt like a start in the right direction, but a part of me didn't believe it would endure. Several days later, Sarah surprised me with a handwritten note. She apologized for everything, realized how much I had been carrying in the relationship, and stated her commitment to making significant changes. I was shocked. This was the first time she had truly accepted responsibility for her acts, and it meant a lot to me. It was a step forward, but I was still unsure whether it would be sufficient. I began to sense a glimmer of hope, but I maintained my hard boundaries. I wasn't going to let myself slip into the same habits. I needed to see actual, long-lasting progress. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful that things would improve. But I wasn't going to base my happiness only on Sarah. That was how much I had learned. So, for now, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I can control my own happiness. Whatever happens to her, if things go better, that's terrific. But if they don't, I will be prepared to walk away. The decision is now in my hands. I was bullied by my sister, ignored by my parents, and left home at 18. Years later, they contacted me for financial help for my sister. For years, my parents disregarded my elder sister's harsh bullying, so I moved out at the age of 18. 6 years later, they wanted us to reconcile, so they contacted me with the awful news. But it backfires on them because my older sister, Rose, was a huge bully all my life, and living with her was sometimes terrible and tough. To be honest, Rose has ADHD. Her continual hyperactivity and aggression made her a difficult person to live with, especially during our childhood. Rose was 5 years old when I was born, and her reaction to my presence was anything but welcome. She was always uncomfortable with the attention I received from our parents. It's not uncommon for older siblings to feel jealous or displaced by a new baby, but Rose's emotions were very strong. She would throw full-blown tantrums whenever my parents spent time with me, as if my very presence offended her. All I remember from my youth is my sister snatching all of my toys. She would snatch them away without hesitation. Birthdays, which should have been pleasant occasions for me, turned into mayhem. Rose would shout, cry, and stage a theatrical scene, completely overshadowing my jubilation. Instead of feeling special on my special day, I was frequently humiliated by my sister's actions. As I grew older, Rose's actions got more targeted. She began to physically lash out at me. She would sometimes shove me out of the way, even when there was no need for it. Other times, she would bite me, which felt intentionally painful and malicious. It was evident that her dislike for me was more than just a phase. She seemed to resent me for taking the spotlight and ruining the interaction she had with our parents before my arrival. Rose has never had any pals. My parents would plan playdates in an attempt to make her feel included, but those should have been fun times evolved into stressful, uncomfortable experiences. I had to continually mediate or apologize for her actions. Over the years, I couldn't help but harbor tremendous anger for my sister. I couldn't understand why she didn't behave like other people or why she couldn't manage her emotions. She also didn't seem to like me much and would frequently pick conflicts with me. Living with her was confusing and upsetting. I wished for a sister who would protect me, not one who continuously tortured me or made me feel unwanted. What made things worse was my parents' lack of concern for me. They adored Rose, and it seemed like they were completely unaware of how her bullying was impacting me. Every time I tried to express my emotions or explain how much her behavior upset me, they dismissed it. They'd explain to me that Rose was a special kid, who required my understanding and patience at all times. Even though I was younger than her, I was expected to satisfy her demands and moods, even if it meant sacrificing my own happiness. I remember when I turned 13. I spent days urging my parents to make it a memorable trip for just the three of us. After much appealing and arguing, they finally reached an agreement. The plan was set. Rose would spend 3 days with our grandparents, and I would finally get my moment. But when Rose found out, she had a major rage, crying uncontrollably for hours, cursing, throwing things, and even getting in my face, screaming threats that she would kill me for attempting to take our parents away from her. To be honest, seeing her rage focused at me was horrifying and overpowering. Instead of sticking up for me, my parents started begging with me to let Rose join us. They tried to argue with me, explaining that it was the only way to calm her down. I resisted at first, knowing deep down that if she came, my fantasy trip would be shattered. But, with Rose raving furiously and my parents desperate, I felt forced to give in. Once again, her actions determined the outcome, and I was forced to accommodate her. As I had anticipated, bringing Rose turned the vacation into another fiasco. From the moment we arrived at Disneyland, she refused to enjoy anything like other children. She refused to sit on any of the rides and remained close to my mother the entire time. She was continually complaining about being overwhelmed by the throng and how much she disliked everything. Her shouts and cries immediately became the focus of everyone's attention, drowning out the joy I'd been building up for weeks. Within 2 hours, Rose was pleading with my parents to take us back to the hotel, severely ruining what should have been a perfect day. In the end, my parents had to split up to make the situation more manageable. My mother drove Rose back to the hotel, and my father stayed with me so I could try to salvage what was left of the day. While I appreciated my father's efforts, the overall experience felt tainted. My birthday was not the pleasant and carefree event I had hoped for, as Rose's wants and tantrums took precedence once more. I know my parents did their best with the cards they were handed, but it was brutally clear that my sister's needs and priorities always came first. Rose wanted their attention at all times, and no matter what I did, I was always relegated to the background. While they believed they were doing the right thing by helping Rose, it frequently left me feeling invisible, as if my needs and feelings were insignificant in comparison to hers. By the time I turned 17, I had had enough of my sister's incessant bullying and my parents' constant ignorance. I began fantasizing of freedom, of finally enjoying a life unencumbered by my sister's needs or my parents' demands. I started applying to colleges, focusing on those far away from home. When my parents learned about my plans, they were furious. They did not understand, or perhaps refused to see, why I felt compelled to leave. They persuaded and virtually begged me to remain in our hometown. They argued that Rose needed me, that I was her sibling, and that it was my job to be there for her. I argued back, emphasizing that I didn't care about Rose and would continue to apply to remote institutions regardless of how they felt. My parents revealed the actual reason they wanted me to stay: their retirement plan. They intended to travel and enjoy their life while expecting me to bear full responsibility for Rose. They informed me about how they had been sacrificing their lives for years, waiting for my time to stand forward. First and foremost, I had never been consulted about my parents' long-term plans, and I had never given them any reason to assume I would be willing to accept care for my sister. Second, I had no intention of becoming her caretaker. I wasn't her dad, and it seemed unjust and absurd to expect it from me. I explained it to them as fully as I could. I also proposed alternate possibilities, such as hiring a full-time caregiver or teaching Rose to be more self-sufficient, at least for a few days at a period, so they could continue to enjoy their retirement. My mother stated that Rose would never be comfortable with a caretaker and insisted on 24-hour surveillance, which could only be provided by a family member, meaning me. My father agreed, even accusing me of being selfish for refusing to participate in their absurd idea. Their remarks stung deeply. As if that wasn't enough, my father then confessed that the entire reason they had me, their second child, was so that I might grow up and take care of Rose in the future. I froze. My thoughts whirled as the weight of that discovery fell on me. I stared at them silently, my eyes wide with disbelief. My mother instantly intervened, chastising my father for disclosing that secret and instructing him to apologize. She then tried to backtrack, stating he didn't mean it and that, of course, they loved me as well. But her comments rang hollow. The damage was done. I couldn't unhear what he said, and it was then that I realized why I'd always felt invisible in comparison to my sister. The fact that my existence had been portrayed as a solution to Rose's care, rather than as my own person with my own goals, was upsetting. My mother insisted that Rose needed care, and that as a member of the family, I had a responsibility to her. She even argued that attending college far away would not benefit my life in any way, and that staying in our community was a better alternative. Living at home, she reasoned, would save me money on rent and other bills. I understood Rose's predicament, but did that mean I didn't deserve a life of my own? Did I have to give up my future just because she existed? The thought was suffocating. I didn't say anything to my parents at the time, knowing it wouldn't change their opinions, but within, I was more determined than ever to escape. I ignored their appeals and plunged myself into my college applications, determined to avoid them. It wasn't easy, but I worked tirelessly, and my efforts eventually paid off. I eventually got into a decent enough college to make the effort worthwhile. Obviously, when I told my parents, they were outraged. They refused to let me go and did everything they could to guilt-trip me into staying. Although I was 18, I knew I still needed support to get away from my parents, so I turned to my grandparents. I contacted, appealing for their assistance. My grandma, who has always been a solid and caring presence in my life, came over right away. She helped me pack my bags and documents and offered me a place to stay with her and my grandfather till I left for college. But my parents did not stop there. They threatened to cut me off financially, refusing to cover any of my educational fees. They informed me that if I left, I would be on my own forever, and they would cut all relations with me. Even so, I refused to give in. I took out a student loan to help support my schooling. On top of that, my grandfather offered to cover some of my bills using his retirement savings. Accepting his help crushed my heart because I knew how hard he and my grandma had worked for that money. They were doing what my parents should have done, providing love, encouragement, and financial assistance. The subsequent 4 years of my life were a whirlwind of hard work and perseverance. College was tough not only academically, but also emotionally. While most of my peers had supportive parents and enough money to go out, I did not have the same luxury. Almost every day I studied as hard as I could to support myself financially. I even took on a part-time job as a server, juggling long days and late nights around my studies. Those years were difficult, but I persevered because I knew there was no other option. Meanwhile, my parents never contacted me, not once, to ask how I was doing or if I needed anything. They maintained a deafening hush. Sometimes I questioned my worth, wondering if I truly deserved to be abandoned by those who were meant to love me unconditionally. But, even then, I refused to give up, telling myself that if I kept going, I'd finally make a life for myself. After graduation, I was really fortunate to get an excellent job. It was the opportunity I had been working so hard for, and it seemed like the first true payoff for all of my years of sacrifices. With this work, I was finally able to start repaying my college loans. More importantly, I began repaying the money my grandfather had given me to help when my parents refused. He never wanted me to repay him. It was a gift of love, not a loan. But it meant a lot to me to lessen his burden and demonstrate that his trust in me was not misplaced. I maintain a close, loving relationship with my grandparents. Whenever possible, I arrange for them to pay me a visit and express my gratitude for everything they've done for me. This year, I started hearing alarming things about my sister from my grandparents. Rose's behavior appears to have worsened with time, and now that I am no longer her target, she has turned her bullying on others. She just began bullying the neighborhood youngsters. Apparently, she had been throwing water at the kids whenever they played outside and intimidating them by saying that they weren't allowed to play in her area. Unsurprisingly, the kids' parents were concerned and complained to my parents several times, urging with them to address Rose's actions and keep her away from their children. However, as usual, my parents did not take appropriate action. They expected Rose would eventually become bored and leave the youngsters alone. However, Rose maintained her shenanigans, and the situation erupted when one of the parents, fed up with her relentless bullying, contacted the cops. When the cops arrived, they noticed Rose throwing water at one of the children and screamed at her to flee for her life. Rose was immediately detained for allegedly harassing minors. My parents objected, but the police chastised them as well for failing to keep Rose under control. While this news has stunned some members of the family, it does not surprise me at all. I'd witnessed her unrestrained conduct for years, knowing full well that my parents were more interested in creating excuses for her than holding her accountable. Nonetheless, the fact that my sister was now in legal jeopardy was a stark reminder of how disturbing her behavior had become. My parents ended up bailing her out, but Rose is now facing a court date. This week, I received a call from my parents that caught me off guard. After 6 years of silence, seeing their phone number on my phone seemed weird. My father told me that he and my mother were at their wits' end dealing with my sister. He claimed they wanted to reconcile with me, that they had missed me for years but had been too furious and stubborn about my decision to leave for college to contact me. It seemed as if he was attempting to rewrite the story, wiping away years of pain and abandonment with a half-hearted apology. I could tell he and Mom had called me for something, so I told them to spit it out. That's when Dad indicated that, with my sister's approaching court appearance, they were finally seeing the truth. That perhaps I had been correct all along about my sister. My father admitted, hesitantly, that my sister was a bully. He claimed that she had gotten worse over the years since I had left and was getting into more serious trouble. Dad informed me how he and Mom had talked and that he now felt sorry for what I had been through. He admitted that they should have listened to me more. He also informed me that they were finally willing to send Rose to therapy so she could receive the assistance she clearly required. Hearing those comments from Dad felt bizarre, especially since I had spent so much of my life urging him and Mom to take action against my sister, only to be dismissed or taught to accept Rose's actions. Dad went on, saying they wanted to meet with me and apologize in person if I was willing to listen. That's when I informed my dad, as quietly as I could, that while I was relieved that they were finally providing my sister with the assistance she required, the truth was that I no longer cared. They had been ignoring me for far too long. Over time, I accepted their absence and constructed a life without them. I wasn't willing to reconcile with them just now. My father then tried to get me to reconsider. Am I an asshole, AITA, if I don't reconcile with my family, especially given how they've treated me for years? Update 1. I want to clarify a few points because I can't respond to everyone in the comments. No, my sister was never bullied. She attended a special school developed for children with similar disabilities, and it was a tiny, closely regulated environment. The school only accepted a small number of special needs kids, who were closely monitored during the day. Her instructors were wonderful and provided good care for her, and my parents were constantly active in her life, checking in on her on a daily basis. There's no way my sister was bullied at school and took out her frustration on me. The truth is that her troubles were never caused by outside influences. They were caused by how she was allowed to behave at home. My parents tolerated her frequent mistreatment of me. If she bit me, slapped me, or shoved me, she would face no consequences. Meanwhile, I was always expected to console Rose or be more sympathetic of her actions. As for why Rose was never sent to therapy, the simple reality is that it has always been too expensive for my parents to consider. Furthermore, my mother has always maintained a possessive attitude about Rose. She never let her spend much time with anyone else since she believed that only she knew Rose's needs. As a result, Rose is too reliant on my mother, who makes all decisions for her. Now that I've read through all of the comments on my post, I understand why my parents are reaching out after all this time. The explanation is obvious. They most likely require my assistance with my sister's future case. I believe they may want me to provide a character reference for her if that is necessary, or they may be hoping I can help with the lawyer bills because I make a good living and they are aware of this. After all these years, it cannot simply be about reuniting. It appears to be a desperate attempt to rectify things, especially given Rose's legal troubles. They need someone to back her up, and I assume they believe I am that person. I am sure they want me to step in and be the good son who helps them clean up their mess, but I am not going to do it. Update 2. For those wondering how my grandparents feel about my parents trying to reconnect with me, they're not delighted. They haven't communicated much to my parents throughout the years, especially since I was kicked out and wanted to go to college. Since then, their relationship has been rocky, and they have generally maintained their distance. My grandparents have only maintained in contact with my parents because they occasionally help out with Rose, whether it's babysitting or caring for her when my parents need it. My grandparents understand exactly what Rose is like. They've witnessed her conduct personally, including her bullying, and are dissatisfied in how my parents have handled everything over the years. They've always been supportive of me, but they've never dismissed Rose's acts. So, with my parents now wishing to make amends and reconnect with me, my grandparents have made it obvious that they understand my reluctance. They have asked me to be cautious. They understand how devastated I have been as a result of my parents' actions, and they do not want me to rush into anything that could wind up being much more traumatic. My folks have also continued to message me all week. They strongly urge me to consider giving them another shot. They keep saying how much they regret the way things have been between us and how they've recognized they made mistakes. As a result, I'm torn. Update 3. My concerns regarding my parents were correct. Today, after weeks of asking, I finally consented to a video conversation with them. It had been a long time since we'd seen each other, and I was feeling a range of emotions building up to the call. When I finally saw them on TV, I couldn't help but note how different they appeared. They were considerably older than I remembered, tired and worn out. It crushed my heart to see them like that. Despite the emotions churning inside me, I attempted to remain calm. We chatted about their lives, how things had gone for them, and I told them a little bit about my business. We talked about my grandparents and caught up on family news. Our talk seemed nearly regular, as if no time had gone since I last saw them. My parents apologized to me again. They appeared almost desperate in their statements, inviting me to come see them and stating that they had been thinking about me. But at that point, I couldn't hold back anymore. I questioned them outright. Why now? After all, if they genuinely missed me, wouldn't they have contacted me sooner? During college, while I was gone and needed their help, they made no effort to stay in touch. So, what changed now? Why were they so ready to reconcile after so much time apart? That's when my parents, almost unwillingly, began to divulge the real reason they had contacted me. They claimed that they were in severe need of financial assistance to care for my sister, Rose. My father told me that they had depleted practically all of their savings over the years due to Rose's ongoing medical procedures. The bills had exhausted them, and now, with her court case waiting and the possibility of requiring therapy for her behavioral disorders, the financial strain was becoming insurmountable. My father finally begged me, almost pleadingly, if I could start sending them money every month because I was doing so well in life. My mother soon stepped in, emphasizing that the money would only be used for Rose and nothing else. I shook my head in answer, feeling a knot form in my stomach. I implored them, my voice quivering with rage. Do you really think I would just send you my hard-earned money to spend on Rose? I was straining to contain my rage. No matter how much you need it, how could I possibly assist you with her? She was the one who bullied me for years. She's the one that made my life miserable. She's the one who destroyed every birthday party I've ever had. My voice cracked as I continued. She is the one who has never shown any sympathy or concern for me. So, why should I aid her now? My history with Rose was so unpleasant, and now they expected me to jump in and be the financial rescuer for someone who had treated me so badly. It didn't make sense, and I couldn't let go of years of pain. I did not stop there, however. All of my frustration and years of bottled-up resentment came spilling out. I pointed out to my parents that they had never kept me safe from Rose. They'd never given me genuine compassion when it came to her. Instead, they simply expected me to follow suit, to buy into their story, and to care for her as if everything she did was something I had to accept. I was a youngster, and I needed their protection, but they had let me down several times. I explained that just because Rose has ADHD does not mean she should not be held accountable for her conduct now that she is an adult. I blamed my parents and made it plain that if they had given her proper care when she was younger, things could have turned out differently now. Perhaps she would have grown into a better person, capable of realizing the pain she causes others. But they didn't. They had let her get away with so much that she was eventually jailed for pestering young children. Even after this, they kept urging me to intervene and assist her, as if I weren't her first victim. My parents attempted to argue back, but I informed them that, while I appreciated their apologies, it did not mean I would simply forgive and forget everything that had happened. My parents backed down after hearing this. They told me that regardless of whether I could help them financially, they wanted to keep working on our relationship. Mom informed me that she and Dad regretted they had made other decisions back then, but because they couldn't erase the past, they wanted to be there for me in whatever way they could going forward. On the one hand, I applauded their eagerness to move forward, but on the other, I wasn't sure I was ready to let go of all the sorrow I'd been carrying for so long. I asked for some time to think. Update 4. I apologize for the month-long gap between updates. My sister has been compelled to attend court-mandated counseling, which I believe is a step in the right way. My parents also had to pay a significant fine as a result of Rose's harassment of those children. I honestly expected my sister's punishment would be harsher, but I guess the judge was lenient because this was Rose's first formal crime. In addition, some of the children's parents have filed a restraining order against my sister. Rose is now legally compelled to stay far away from their children. If she breaks the order, she will be arrested. Now, back to my parents. Since that conversation in which I declined to grant them any financial assistance, they have not mentioned it again. We have continued to chat, but only about minor details. I guess they meant what they said and are just trying to rebuild their relationship with me. Although I am glad to be back in their life, I am not ready to resume a full connection with my family, especially with Rose. I don't think I'll ever forgive her, no matter how much time passes. The things she did to me, bullying me, making my life miserable for so many years, cannot simply be wiped. I hope that through counseling, she will finally learn to hold herself accountable for her acts. To be honest, I have no idea how long it will take, or if it will ever happen.